Chapter 763. I'm going to a new place again. Yi Xian thought about it and said, all right. How could he be unable to discern that the violet-clothed woman before him was helping him? This was his fortuitous encounter. I can't miss it. The woman smiled and said, let's go. In next to no time, the two of them vanished. On the way, Yi Xian asked, Senior, are you very familiar with that man in green clothes? The woman smiled and said, guess. Yi Xian was speechless. Guess what? The woman glanced at Yi Xian and said, you want to ask me why I keep helping you, right? Yi Xian nodded and said, yes. The woman smiled and said, didn't I say it already? You're the son of an old friend. Yi Xian thought for a while. Then he said, okay. The woman suddenly asked, you're at odds with the temple? Yi Xian nodded and said, they insist on doing something to me. I have no choice. The woman said softly, this force isn't that simple. Those gods aren't weak either. You have to be careful. Yi Xian nodded and said, Senior knows those gods. The woman smiled and said, they aren't really gods. However, they aren't simple either. They're all people who once shook the world. Yi Xian looked at the woman and said, can you beat them? The woman laughed and said, don't even think about it. I won't go and beat those gods for you. You have to face those trivial matters yourself. After she finished speaking, she vanished into the starry sky. On the spot, Yi Xian shrugged and hurriedly followed after her. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. Not far away from him was the woman in purple clothes. Yi Xian's eyes were slightly closed. His current sword Dao realm was at the true realm. His current combat strength had increased by at least a few times. Realm. His biggest problem now was still his realm. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then sent a sound transmission to Shengguan Xiener and Jiangjiu. He had to ask the two girls to help him find a sword. Back in the sword sect, he had asked in a roundabout way, but unfortunately, the sword sect had nothing. All the valuables inside were gone. Actually, it was normal. There was no one in the sword sect now, so how could there be treasures? Therefore, he had to find the sword himself. As long as he quietly improved his strength, he would be able to slay even a god with a single slash. About 2 hours later, the purple-robed woman in front of them suddenly stopped. Yi Xian looked up and saw that not far away from them, there was a giant city floating in the starry sky. Yi Xian asked, this is? The purple-clothed woman smiled and said, I'll bring you to see the world. I'll let you see what it means by there's always someone better than you out there. With that, she led Yi Xian into the city. However, when they entered the city, an old man suddenly blocked their way. The old man looked at the two of them, then his gaze fell on the purple-clothed woman. Your Excellency, the purple-clothed woman waved her right hand, and a token fell in front of the old man. Seeing this token, the old man's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully. Your Excellency, please enter. The purple-clothed woman looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. With that, she walked into the city with Yi Xian. Yi Xian found that the whole city was very quiet. Moreover, there were no buildings, and the whole city was empty. Yi Xian looked at the purple-clothed woman. Senior, this is? The purple-clothed woman smiled and said, you'll know later. Yi Xian looked around, and it was very quiet. The old man from before did not leave either, and he followed behind the purple-clothed woman. Soon, the three of them arrived in the city. In front of the three of them, there were two halos, one red, the other black. The purple-clothed woman looked at Yi Xian. Choose one. Yi Xian asked, what do you do? The purple-clothed woman said, choose one. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then chose the red one. The purple-clothed woman nodded. Go in. Yi Xian looked at the purple-clothed woman. Senior. Will something bad happen to you? The purple-clothed woman smiled and said, you only have one chance. Are you going in or not? Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then walked in. The red light trembled slightly, and Yi Xian's body began to become illusory. The purple-clothed woman looked at Yi Xian. Come out alive. Yi Xian's expression changed. Can I come out now? Before he could finish his words, he had already disappeared. The purple-clothed woman turned to look at the old man behind her. Go and see your master. The old man hurriedly nodded. Your Excellency, please. The purple-clothed woman's body trembled slightly, and she disappeared on the spot. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of a small village. It was night time. The sky was dark, and there was no moon. Yi Xian looked around. Suddenly, his expression changed. Because at this moment, he found that he could not use his divine sense. Not only that, he felt that the profound qi in his body seemed to have disappeared. He could not even sense the prison pagoda. What was going on? Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Xian opened his palm, summoning the executing heaven sword. However, there was no response from the executing heaven sword. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression sank. He had become a normal person. A completely normal person. He had no external objects, profound qi could not be used, and he could not contact the prison pagoda. Why did the purple-clothed woman want him here? Yi Xian frowned, and he was slightly puzzled by her intentions. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and looked over. At the entrance of the village, a woman walked out. The woman was wearing a tight black dress. Her hair was tied into a ponytail, and her eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Yi Xian noticed that her face and arms were covered in scars. Especially her face, there was a scar that stretched across half of her face, and it looked extremely hideous. The woman held a dagger in her left hand, an ordinary dagger. At this moment, she was staring at him with a hostile gaze. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yi Xian. I started cultivating in the sword at the age of 3, attained the sword Immortal realm at the age of 10, and was invincible in the younger generation of Sky-Earth world at the age of 16. Now, I'm able to kill earthly immortals. May I know your name, miss? The woman sized up Yi Xian. You seem like an idiot. Yi Xian's face darkened, and he was just about to speak when the woman turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly followed her. Miss, this is... He hadn't finished speaking when the woman suddenly turned around. In the next moment, a cold light flashed, and the dagger had slashed towards his throat. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground and retreated explosively by over 10 m, and the dagger just brushed past his throat. After Yi Xian stopped, his expression had become solemn. That strike from before was extraordinarily swift. Most importantly, she hadn't utilized any profound energy, and she'd merely utilized speed. Moreover, the angle was extremely tricky. Regardless of whether it was her speed, strength, or angle, they were practically perfect and without any flaws. Since he attained the true realm of the sword Dao, he would look at the essence of everything. The woman glanced at Yi Xian, and then she turned around and left without saying a word. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss. Can we talk? The woman didn't speak, and Yi Xian hurriedly followed her. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly stopped moving. In the next moment, a strand of cold light flashed. Yi Xian dodged to the side, and the strand of cold light brushed past the space between his brows. In the next moment, he felt a wave of sharp pain come from his stomach, and he retreated explosively by over 30 m. After he stopped, Yi Xian's expression became extremely unsightly. Because he noticed that his body had become ordinary as well. How could this be possible? Yi Xian glanced at the sky. What kind of power was that? Even his physical body had been transformed into an ordinary one. He was a completely ordinary person right now. The woman didn't speak further, and she just turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly followed her. Miss, let's talk. The woman suddenly turned around and gazed coldly at Yi Xian. Don't you find it annoying? Do I know you well? As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian chased after her again. The woman suddenly turned around, and Yi Xian hurriedly stopped. The woman looked coldly at him. What exactly do you want? She could tell that she couldn't kill Yi Xian with her strength, or it could be said that she would have to risk her life to have a chance. But she obviously didn't want both sides to suffer. Yi Xian smiled. Miss, this is my first time here, and I don't know where this place is. I hope Miss can enlighten me. The woman looked at Yi Xian. You don't know where this place is? Yi Xian nodded. I don't. The woman said indifferently, it's a fair competition. Yi Xian frowned slightly. A fair competition? The woman glanced at Yi Xian, and then turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly followed her. What's a fair competition? The woman looked coldly at Yi Xian. Don't follow me. Yi Xian looked around, and he didn't see anyone else, so he followed her again. Miss, let's have a chat. The woman stopped, and she stared at Yi Xian. Are you a ghost? Yi Xian, the woman suddenly stretched out her hand and pointed outside the village. There's a martial arts arena dozens of miles away from there. Every day, there are people competing there, and everyone's cultivation is sealed, so they can't use divine arts, and they can't use external objects. Now do you understand what a fair competition is? I see. Yi Xian nodded slightly. I understand. He now understood why the woman in purple asked him to come here. This was to make his sword Dao even purer. Here, he couldn't use external objects. There was nothing to strengthen him. What a good place. Yi Xian smiled, turned around, and walked away. He wanted to try. At this moment, the woman suddenly said, Where are you going? Yi Xian smiled and said, Let's go to the martial arts competition. The woman glanced at Yi Xian. Are you a fool? Yi Xian, the woman was expressionless. You're not qualified to compete now. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? The woman said indifferently, First, you have to be qualified to compete, and second, you have to have odd crystals. You don't have either now. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Qualification to compete? Odd crystals? The woman said, There's one more thing, that is, you're courting death if you go now. Yi Xian was a little unconvinced. Miss, you're underestimating me. At this moment, the woman suddenly disappeared, and Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. He clasped his hands together, and this time, he clasped a dagger, but the next moment, the woman suddenly kicked her knee towards his abdomen. Yi Xian didn't retreat, but instead, he let go of the dagger and hugged the woman. Then, the two of them rolled on the ground. Chapter 764. Yi Xian didn't have the slightest intention of taking advantage of her. During a battle, who would care about the difference between men and women? They would only fight to the death. The woman's reaction was also extremely fast. The moment she was hugged by Yi Xian and rolled on the ground, she suddenly elbowed Yi Xian's temple. If it hit, Yi Xian's head would probably split open. Yi Xian's reaction wasn't slow either. The moment the woman elbowed, he directly punched with his right hand. Boom! Along with the sound of an explosion, the two of them collided and separated. At this moment, the two of them were a few feet apart. The woman in black gently raised her right foot and leaned forward. She held a dagger in her right hand while her left hand poured backward. She was like a cheetah that was ready to pounce. Yi Xian clenched his right hand and took half a step back with the tip of his foot on the ground. This posture allowed him to burst out a powerful force in an instant. The two of them were in a stalemate. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss, I have no ill intentions towards you. The woman in black looked at Yi Xian with vigilance in her eyes. Yi Xian took the initiative to retreat a few feet. Seeing this, the woman in black gradually relaxed. She glanced at Yi Xian and said, There are very harsh conditions for a fair competition. If you want to qualify for the competition, you must first defeat a demon beast. After you defeat a demon beast, you also need to have enough odd crystals to be able to challenge it. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I can defeat any demon beast? The woman in black nodded, yes. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Where are the demon beasts? The woman in black pointed to the right. Go there and look. Yi Xian nodded and cupped his fists. Thank you. With that, he turned and left. The woman in black glanced at Yi Xian. You really want to go? Yi Xian stopped and nodded. I want to practice. The woman in black said in a deep voice, that demon beast is not as simple as you think. Yi Xian smiled and said, shall we go together? The woman in black was slightly startled. She did not expect that Yi Xian would invite her. Yi Xian added, it's good to have a companion. As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something. He picked up a branch from the side and tapped it lightly. I'm a swordsman. Swordsman. A hint of surprise flashed in the woman's eyes. You're a swordsman? Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, I am a proper swordsman. The woman in black glanced at Yi Xian. Swordsman. As she spoke, she fell silent for a moment before she said, let's go together. Yi Xian smiled and said, Miss, please. The black-clothed woman nodded slightly and then led Yi Xian away. On the way, Yi Xian asked, how should I address you? The woman in black said calmly, Zhang Qing. Yi Xian nodded. Miss Zhang, what realm are you in? Zhang Qing said, unknown. Unknown. Hearing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This woman was actually in the unknown realm. Was there a mistake? How old was she? The woman in front of him should be about the same age as him. Such a young unknown realm? What kind of monster was this? Zhang Qing looked at Yi Xian. What realm are you in? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, unknown. Zhang Qing nodded. You're Yi Xian? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Zhang Qing said, why haven't I heard of you before? Where are you from? Yi Xian said, Black Yellow Great World. Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian. Black Yellow Great World? The temple's territory? Yi Xian asked, Miss Zhang knows about the temple? Zhang Qing nodded. It's an ancient power with 6 gods. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian. You're from the temple? Yi Xian smiled. I'm from the Northern Territory. Zhang Qing said, Black Yellow Great World. There's a monster from your Black Yellow Great World here as well. His name is Duanmu Xian, and he's a very strong person. Duanmu Xian? Yi Xian nodded slightly. He'd actually never heard of this person. It should be said that he knew very little about the geniuses of the Black Yellow Great World's younger generation. Because his previous opponents had all been those old freaks. At this moment, Zhang Qing suddenly said, we're here. Yi Xian looked up. There was a mountain range not far away. It was dark at this moment, so it was a dark mass that was slightly horrifying. If it was in the past, he would definitely be fearless. But now, his cultivation and physical strength were sealed, so he naturally didn't dare underestimate his enemy. Zhang Qing said, the demonic beasts here don't have high realms, but they have extremely rich combat experience. Because those who survive can be said to have experienced thousands of battles, it's very difficult for you to defeat them. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, even you can't beat them? Zhang Qing said in a deep voice, I'm evenly matched with them, but it's very difficult to take something from them. Yi Xian asked, you have to take something? Zhang Qing nodded. Yi Xian nodded. Then I'll go in. After saying that, he walked towards the mountain range. Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian, but didn't follow. Soon, Yi Xian arrived at the mountain range. He hadn't walked for long when a demonic beast suddenly appeared in front of him. This demonic beast was shaped like a wolf, and its body was covered in scales. As Zhang Qing said, these demonic beasts' realms were not high. If they were outside, he could kill them with a wisp of sword intent. But now, he couldn't mobilize any power. It could be said that he was already at a disadvantage before the fight even started. That demonic beast glanced at Yi Xian, but didn't move. Yi Xian didn't move either. Whoever moved would expose their strength first. Both sides were using silence to fight. Just like this, after about half an hour, that demonic beast finally couldn't bear it anymore. It suddenly rushed towards Yi Xian. Its speed was extremely fast. Yi Xian picked up a branch on the ground and stepped forward lightly. The branch in his hand went straight towards the demonic beast's right eye. That demonic beast didn't dodge, but directly took Yi Xian's stab head-on. However, when Yi Xian's branch approached its eye, its right eye suddenly closed. Bang! The branch in Yi Xian's hand directly exploded, and Yi Xian seemed to have expected it. The moment the branch broke, his left hand slammed into the demonic beast's face. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian instantly retreated more than a dozen feet. As soon as he stopped, a powerful force swept towards him. Yi Xian squinted his eyes. He knew that he couldn't take this demonic beast head-on. His toes lightly tapped, and his whole body floated to the right. With this movement, the demonic beast directly hit empty air. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly appeared behind it, and his sword stabbed towards its anus. Yi Xian was very experienced in fighting in the forest. Whether it was fighting a human or a demonic beast, he had to hit the weak spot. Especially this kind of demonic beast, he absolutely couldn't take it head-on. He could only find its weakest spot. The anus was the weakest spot. Yi Xian's attack was ruthless and fast. This stab directly pierced through. A-oh! In an instant, a shrill scream resounded in the forest. The next moment, the demonic beast turned around and slapped its paw at Yi Xian, but Yi Xian had already retreated more than a dozen feet. The demonic beast glared at Yi Xian. It roared at Yi Xian, and then slammed into Yi Xian. The corner of Yi Xian's lips curled up. He didn't take it head-on. His figure flickered, and he dodged to the side. The demonic beast once again missed. The moment it landed on the ground, Yi Xian's sword stabbed towards its anus. A-oh! The demonic beast suddenly raised its head and screamed. Its voice was extremely shrill, and at this time, Yi Xian suddenly flew up and slashed at its throat. Bang! The branch shattered, and Yi Xian was forced back again. Yi Xian frowned. He didn't expect this demonic beast's throat to be so hard. Just then, the demonic beast suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Its eyes were wide open and filled with anger. In the next moment, it rushed towards Yi Xian again. In its anger, it didn't care about anything else. It didn't expect that this was exactly what Yi Xian wanted. He wanted this demonic beast to be angry. Anger would make it lose its mind. But now, this demonic beast had lost its mind. Yi Xian dodged to the side, and the demonic beast missed again. However, this time, it didn't wait for Yi Xian to make a move and rushed towards Yi Xian again. Yi Xian didn't take it head-on either. He was well aware of his current physical body. He was no longer the same person as before. If he chose to take it head-on, he would die without a trace. Just like that, Yi Xian kept dodging. Not long after, the demonic beast's speed and reaction slowed down, and Yi Xian would stab its anus from time to time. Although it was stabbed many times, it didn't kill the demonic beast. However, it did slow down its movement. After all, that place was still very fragile. Now, it realized that the human in front of it wasn't just staring at that position. He was also staring at the position in front. There were a few times that if it wasn't for its quick reaction, a certain place would have been cut off by this human. Just like that, about half an hour later, Yi Xian found an opportunity and stabbed the demonic beast's anus again. Roar! The demonic beast covered its buttocks with its claws and spun around on the spot. Just as Yi Xian was about to attack again, the demonic beast suddenly turned around and ran. Run? Yi Xian was stunned. He wanted to chase after it, but the demonic beast was too fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the night not far away. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. This guy actually knew how to run. I was too careless. Yi Xian shook his head, feeling a little regretful. It wasn't easy for him to exhaust this demonic beast, but now it just ran away. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and chose not to continue challenging the demonic beast. That was because his stamina was almost depleted. He needed a good rest now. Yi Xian turned around and left. At this moment, the ground behind him suddenly trembled. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He turned around, and at this moment, a dense forest not far from him suddenly collapsed. Soon, a group of demonic beasts rushed towards him. Among the demonic beasts, there was the one he had just fought. That demonic beast glared at Yi Xian and roared crazily. The other demonic beasts followed suit and chased after Yi Xian like crazy. Yi Xian looked at the group of demonic beasts and his scalp went numb. There were at least 100. Damn, they went to call for help. Yi Xian turned around and ran, but the group of demonic beasts obviously had no intention of giving up. They kept chasing crazily. P.S. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Speaking of which, Yi Xian's sword Dao was truly on the right track. It was a sword Dao different from the master of the 3 swords at the top of the pagoda. Guess what kind of sword Dao it was? Chapter 765. Who can withstand more than 100 demonic beasts? Yi Xian fled frantically. Soon, he met Zhang Qing. Seeing so many demonic beasts behind Yi Xian, Zhang Qing was stunned and asked, "What did you do?" Yi Xian didn't say anything. He grabbed Zhang Qing and ran. Behind them, the group of demonic beasts chased frantically. Yi Xian was about to run in the direction of the village when Zhang Qing suddenly said, "You can't take them there. Follow me." After saying that, she took Yi Xian and ran to the right. Fortunately, both of them were extremely fast. Those demonic beasts couldn't catch up in a short time. However, those demonic beasts didn't give up. Especially the leading demonic beast, it roared as it chased, as if it had gone mad. Beside Yi Xian, Zhang Qing said in a deep voice, "These demonic beasts have never fought as a group." "What did you do?" Yi Xian smiled awkwardly, "No, nothing." Zhang Qing stared at Yi Xian, "You definitely did something to make that demonic beast angry." Yi Xian, at this moment, the group of demonic beasts behind them suddenly roared, and the whole ground began to tremble violently. "It's gone mad." Zhang Qing's face was a bit ugly. She looked coldly at Yi Xian, "What did you do?" Yi Xian hesitated and said, "I just fought it one-on-one, and then found its weakness, that's all." Zhang Qing said in a deep voice, "That's impossible." Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, the group of demonic beasts behind them suddenly accelerated. Seeing this scene, both of their faces changed. They wouldn't stop until they were dead. Zhang Qing's face was gloomy, and no one knew what she was thinking. Yi Xian said, "Miss Zhang Qing, let's split up and escape." Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian. Yi Xian directly fled to the left, and the group of demonic beasts directly chased to the left, ignoring Zhang Qing. Obviously, their target was Yi Xian. Looking at the group of demon beasts chasing after Yi Xian, Zhang Qingdai frowned. What did this guy do? In the distance, Yi Xian was running madly, and behind him, the group of demonic beasts was chasing relentlessly. Soon, Yi Xian arrived at a plain, and the group of demonic beasts behind him was getting closer and closer. If he continued running like this, he would be finished. Yi Xian's face darkened. Because his current physical strength was not as good as this group of demonic beasts. All of his abilities were sealed. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He bit his finger and a drop of blood flowed out. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the drop of blood fell onto his palm. After that, he looked at the group of demon beasts. Meanwhile, the group of demon beasts had stopped moving. All the demonic beasts stopped. All the demonic beasts were staring at the drop of blood in Yi Xian's palm. A powerful aura. In that drop of blood, they could smell a powerful aura. Seeing that the group of demonic beasts had stopped, Yi Xian was instantly relieved. The reason why he took out his blood was not because he wanted to rely on the power of his bloodline, but because he wanted to rely on the Heaven's Mandate True Dragon aura in his blood. He had fused with the Heaven's Mandate True Dragon, so his blood also had the aura of the Heaven's Mandate True Dragon. This level of divine beast was definitely a powerful deterrent to the demonic beasts. As expected, after smelling the Heaven's Mandate True Dragon aura in his blood, the demonic beasts all stopped. However, the demonic beast that fought with him earlier still wanted to make a move. Anger had made it lose its mind. It only wanted to kill this human in front of it. Seeing that the demonic beast was about to make a move, Yi Xian's eyes twitched. This guy wouldn't be mad, right? Then, Qingsheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man was a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting with his life on the line for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his crown prince position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, even now he is fighting with his life on the line for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position, it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. Immediately, he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the ancestral hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man wore a tight-fitting robe that was torn and tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked up to Yi Ling. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince, why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly, this is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed, you should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. You'll be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply, this subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 766. While Yi Xian was still in a daze, he suddenly felt a wave of sharp pain come from his stomach, and then he retreated by over 10 m. However, he hadn't even stopped when a powerful gust of wind assaulted his face. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly, and he swiftly crossed his arms before blocking it. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then Yi Xian retreated by over 10 m again. He just stopped when an ear-piercing sound of something tearing resounded from his right. It was a whipping kick. Yi Xian's body suddenly bent backward. That person's whip kick directly swept through the air. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stood up and then bumped forward. Bang! A figure instantly retreated by over 10 m. Yi Xian looked over to see a woman standing in front of him. She wore a black dress, had picturesque features, and an icy cold gaze that carried killing intent. Because Yi Xian had touched a place he shouldn't have. Yi Xian clenched his right fist slowly. He didn't dare act carelessly towards this woman. Or it should be said that he couldn't act carelessly towards anyone here. Right at this moment, the man with a long saber suddenly roared furiously, Chan Yu, kill him. The woman glanced at the man with a long saber, watch your words. As soon as she finished speaking, she gazed at Yi Xian. In the next moment, her body suddenly became ethereal. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. He opened his palm, and a wooden branch appeared there. In the next moment, he stabbed it forward swiftly. It was an extremely ordinary swift stab. He destroyed it with a single strike. Bang! An explosion suddenly resounded in front of Yi Xian, and then both of them retreated explosively at the same time. However, the woman called Chan Yu suddenly vanished while they retreated. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and stabbed with his sword. Bang! A figure retreated explosively. It was Chan Yu. After Chan Yu stopped, she gazed coldly at Yi Xian, swordsman. Her voice carried a trace of seriousness. Swordsman. It could be said that a swordsman's combat power was very high among the warriors, especially the powerful swordsman. Yi Xian didn't return to Chan Yu. He glanced at Zhang Qing, who was nearby. At this moment, Zhang Qing and the man with the long saber were in a deadlock, and neither of them could do anything to the other. Yi Xian looked at Jin Yu. If this goes on, both sides will suffer. Chan Yu clenched his right fist tightly. Yi Xian smiled. Suddenly, he disappeared on the spot. Since the other party refused to give up, he naturally chose to take the initiative to attack. The sword light was like lightning, disappearing in a flash. Chi! The sound of something tearing through the air rang out. The moment Yi Xian disappeared, Chan Yu disappeared as well. A series of afterimages instantly enveloped Yi Xian and his sword gleam. Chi 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 chi. The sound of something tearing through the air resounded incessantly as Yi Xian and Chan Yu fought intensely. Gradually, Yi Xian became fiercer and fiercer as he fought. Ruthlessness. All those years ago in Pine City, he'd understood that one had to be ruthless when dealing with one's enemies. In a battle of life and death, it was usually a competition of who was more ruthless. Just like that, about 15 minutes later, the nearby teleportation array suddenly shook violently. Then, a black box appeared in the teleportation array. A ferocious glow appeared in the eyes of the man with the long saber when he saw the black box, and the killing intent in his eyes grew even stronger. On the other hand, Zhang Qing's eyes were filled with killing intent as well. In this place, resources were very, very important. She would not give up even half a step. It didn't take long for the two of them to enter into battle again. Yi Xian gazed at Chan Yu. Suddenly, he vanished, and the wooden stick in his hand stabbed towards Chan Yu. At the instant that Yi Xian vanished, numerous strange shadows suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian's eyes closed slightly as he stabbed left and right repeatedly. In an instant, the shadows shattered. Meanwhile, Chan Yu had retreated over 10 m back, and she didn't dare to approach Yi Xian again. Yi Xian glanced coldly at Chan Yu, and then he suddenly vanished. Hiss! A strand of light flashed, and then the sound of air being torn apart resounded. Chan Yu's expression changed drastically. She didn't dare to take Yi Xian's attack head-on, and she retreated again. After all, Yi Xian's attack wasn't that easy to take. Simply speaking, she didn't want to fight with her life on the line. Because even if she won, she would be reaped by someone else. A few resources weren't worth it. When she thought up to this point, Chan Yu turned around and left. Suddenly, the man with the long saber said, "You keep her busy." Chan Yu glanced coldly at the man. "Can't you use your brain?" As soon as she finished speaking, she swiftly vanished into the night. The man's expression was extremely unsightly, and he glared fiercely at Yi Xian. "Little bastard. I'll remember you." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Suddenly, Yi Xian appeared in front of the man. He gazed at the man, and the man was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he swung his saber forward. Hiss! The saber tore through the air and whistled through the air. Yi Xian didn't take this attack head-on. He moved slightly to the side, causing the saber to miss. At practically the exact same moment, Yi Xian's sword slashed horizontally towards the man's stomach. The man's reaction was extremely swift, and he suddenly withdrew his saber to block Yi Xian's attack. Bang! The man retreated explosively with his saber. Yi Xian didn't let the man go. He leaped up and swung his sword lightly towards the man. After he received the guidance of those 6 experts from the sword sect, his attainments in the sword Tao had attained the true realm. Moreover, he'd obtained a huge amount of knowledge in the sword Tao. It could be said that his attainments in the sword Tao were countless times stronger than before. Moreover, he didn't lack battle awareness. He didn't walk all the way here, but fought his way here. The man's expression changed greatly when he saw Yi Xian's sword flying towards him. This time, he didn't choose to take it head-on. Instead, he chose to attack. He slashed forward with his saber. One man can defeat 10 men. This slash was as heavy as 1,000 kilograms. Instead of retreating, Yi Xian moved forward and stabbed the tip of the blade with his sword. This stab caused the blade to tremble violently, and the energy contained within it was instantly reduced to nothingness. At the same time, a powerful force shook the arm of the man with the blade. Bang! The saber in the man's hand flew out of his hand. The man was horrified. He was just about to retreat when Yi Xian's sword was already at his throat. The man stared at Yi Xian. One sword to break all laws. True realm attainments in the sword Dao. At this point, he paused for a moment, and then said, "Your Excellency, I've offended you with my words. Please forgive me." Yi Xian was stunned. Did this guy admit defeat? He wanted to kill him directly, but the other party actually admitted defeat. At this moment, the man said, "If Your Excellency is willing to let me go, I'm willing to hand over all my assets." Yi Xian looked at the man. "I'll get them after I kill you." At the side, Zhang Qing suddenly said, "If you kill him, there won't be any left. Because most people will bring their resources with them." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. Chi! The man's head flew into the air. Zhang Qing's voice stopped abruptly. Yi Xian glanced at Zhang Qing. "Although the resources are good, I don't want to leave any disasters behind." His style was that he didn't offend people at will. However, if anyone were to become his enemy, he would definitely kill them without leaving any disasters behind. Moreover, the man before him was able to pick up and let go at the same time. This kind of person was the most terrifying. If he spared the man's life, who knew when the man would give him a fatal blow in the future? Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian searched the man's body. However, he didn't find anything except the knife. At this moment, Zhang Qing suddenly said, "That knife is a piece of trash outside, but here, it may be a divine weapon. Do you understand what I mean?" Hearing Zhang Qing's words, Yi Xian suddenly came to a realization. This place was not the outside. As Zhang Qing said, if it was outside, this knife was a piece of scrap iron. But here, where everyone's cultivation was sealed, this knife was a divine weapon. Yi Xian quickly put away the knife. Zhang Qing said, "Come with me." After speaking, she took Yi Xian to the teleportation array not far away. She opened the box. In the box, there was a palm-sized token. In addition, there were 30 dark purple odd crystals and some other items. Zhang Qing picked up the token and 10 odd crystals and handed them to Yi Xian, "Yours." Yi Xian didn't refuse. He put away the token and odd crystals and said, "Miss Zhang, if I win, will there be a reward?" Zhang Qing nodded, "Yes, you will get the odd crystals paid by the other party." Yi Xian nodded, "Understood." Zhang Qing said, "You want to go now?" Yi Xian nodded, "I want to fight." Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian, "I will take you there." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Then I will have to trouble Miss Zhang." Zhang Qing didn't say anything and walked into the distance with Yi Xian. After the two left the village, they walked for about an hour. Finally, Yi Xian saw a huge arena suspended in the air. There were some people below the arena. There weren't many of them, only a few dozen people, and most of them were very young. Beside Yi Xian, Zhang Qing said softly, "These people can be said to be the most outstanding young people in our four-dimensional universe. They come from various universes, and they are the top existences in their respective universes. The forces behind them are not simple, because without a powerful force behind them, it is impossible for them to come here." Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian, "If you can fight to the top of the list." Seeing that Zhang Qing didn't continue, Yi Xian asked, "How about fighting to the top of the list?" Zhang Qing said softly, you will get many benefits that you can't refuse. However, it is difficult to fight to the top of the list. Difficult. Yi Xian looked up at the arena in the air. At this moment, there were two people fighting fiercely on the arena. After watching for a moment, Yi Xian looked at Zhang Qing and said, Miss Zhang Qing, to fight to the top of the list, do I have to defeat everyone? Zhang Qing nodded, almost. Yi Xian looked up at the arena and said softly, then fight to the top. Fight. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth slightly rose. Right now, he wanted to fight. Fight crazily. He, Yi Xian, didn't want to always rely on others. The heart of a strong person. In the past, he was more casual and didn't have many goals. But now, he wanted to become stronger. He couldn't rely on others anymore. Yi Xian walked towards the arena. Yi Xian didn't notice that at this moment, his state of mind had begun to change. P.S. Today is boring, let's chat. If you don't have anything to talk about, let's talk about my handsomeness. I will definitely reply. No kidding. Chapter 767. He rarely fought for it. Fight. As long as people were alive, they had to fight. Not fighting was not being aloof from the world, but being incompetent. Not to mention cultivators, even people in the secular world had to fight. If they didn't fight, how could they change their fate? If they didn't fight, how could they live better? And if cultivators didn't fight, how could they fight against the heavens? How could they fight against fate? Fight. Cultivators had to have a competitive heart. In the past, he didn't think too much about becoming stronger. To be precise, he rarely took the initiative to fight for anything. Because in his opinion, he only needed to protect his sister and loved ones. But now he realized that as long as people were alive, they had to fight for something. Even if it was to fight for pride. He didn't want to be protected by others all the time. He didn't want the woman in the plain dress or someone else to help him solve the problem. Rely on himself. Fight. Around Yi Xian, a powerful sword intent suddenly appeared. This sword intent became stronger and stronger, but it quickly disappeared. At this moment, Yi Xian didn't even realize that his heart of swordsmanship had undergone a substantial change. Enlightenment. Many times, once people had an epiphany, it was a brand new start. And at this time, the battle on the ring had ended. Yi Xian flew to the ring and saw an old man standing next to the ring. The old man was sitting on a chair and seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Zhang Qing said that the old man in front of him was the person in charge here. Yi Xian walked to the old man and bowed slightly. Senior, this junior is here to challenge. As he spoke, he placed the odd crystals and the challenge token on the table in front of the old man. The old man glanced at it, then waved his right hand and the odd crystals were directly kept by him. The old man closed his eyes again. Yi Xian was stunned. What does this mean? At this time, Zhang Qing appeared beside Yi Xian. She gently pulled Yi Xian's sleeve and motioned for Yi Xian to follow her. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then nodded. The two left the ring. Below, Yi Xian was puzzled. What does he mean? Zhang Qing said in a deep voice, I forgot to tell you one thing. Every time we compete, this old man will ask for some benefits. Benefits? Yi Xian asked, do I have to give it to everyone? Zhang Qing shook his head. Among them, there are some monstrous geniuses that even he doesn't dare to offend. He will only deal with those who are new or those who don't have a particularly strong background. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. As he spoke, he walked towards the old man. Zhang Qing grabbed Yi Xian. What are you doing? Yi Xian said, get my things back. Zhang Qing stared at Yi Xian. Are you crazy? You're courting death if you ask for it. Yi Xian shrugged. Then what should we do? Zhang Qing said in a deep voice, I'll suffer in silence. Yi Xian said angrily, eat my ass. With that, he turned around and headed straight for the old man. Suffer in silence? He naturally understood that at this time, suffering a loss was the best choice. However, he couldn't suffer this loss. If he suffered a loss, he would have to admit defeat. If he admitted defeat now, he would have to hold back his grievance. This grievance had to be spat out. Seeing Yi Xian walking towards the old man, Zhang Qing shook his head. Stupid. If Yi Xian did this, not only would he not get his things back, but he would also offend someone and might even lose his life. Many times, people had to lower their heads. In the distance, Yi Xian returned to the ring again. At this time, some people looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man and smiled. Senior, do you still need odd crystals? The old man glanced at Yi Xian. Young man, are you sure? Yi Xian grinned. The next moment, he suddenly picked up the table in front of him and smashed it at the old man. Seeing this scene, everyone in the field was stunned. What is this guy going to do? Below, Zhang Qing and Yi Xian were dumbfounded. This guy, the old man didn't expect Yi Xian to suddenly attack, but his reaction wasn't slow. He immediately flashed back and directly dodged Yi Xian's smash. Boom! The table instantly turned into powder, but Yi Xian didn't stop. He took out the long saber and directly slashed at the old man. Chi! Wherever the blade passed, a tearing sound rang. The old man narrowed his eyes slightly. He slightly leaned to the side and directly dodged the saber. At the same time, his left hand swept toward Yi Xian. With this sweep, the air where his arm passed seemed to have been sucked dry, and there was a series of explosions. Yi Xian seemed to have expected this and immediately blasted his right hand toward the old man's face. Exchanging injury for injury. Seeing this scene, the old man's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't choose to exchange injury for injury and immediately retracted his hand to block in front of him. Bang! The old man instantly moved over 10 back, and he'd only just stopped when a large saber slashed towards him. A cold glow flashed through the old man's eyes. He stretched out his right hand, and his palm was about to touch the blade of Yi Xian's saber when he suddenly twisted his palm and slapped it against the blade of Yi Xian's saber. Bang! The saber was slapped to the side. At the same time, the old man took a swift step forward and slammed his fist towards Yi Xian's face. Yi Xian directly slammed his left fist towards the old man's fist. Bang! With a loud explosion, the two of them collided and separated. It didn't take long for them to stop, and there were over 10 between them. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. What do you think you're doing? Yi Xian didn't waste his breath at all. He just leaped up and blasted towards the old man like a cannonball. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. He took half a step back with his left foot and pulled back his right hand. In the next moment, he suddenly slammed his right fist forward. Bang! This punch caused the space where it passed to tremble violently, and its impetus was shocking. Yi Xian's expression was calm when he saw this. Suddenly, he pointed his saber forward. Using a saber as a sword. The saber stabbed directly between the old man's fingers, and the old man's expression instantly changed drastically. At this moment, Yi Xian's saber directly cut through his fingers and slashed towards the old man. The old man swiftly dodged with his right foot and retreated over 30 back. At this moment, only 2 fingers remained on his right hand. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You're a swordsman. You. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up and slashed down with his saber. Hiss. A sharp tearing sound resounded again. The old man's expression changed drastically. This time, he didn't dare to take Yi Xian's saber head-on, and he retreated instead. This was because the guy in front of him was not a saber cultivator at all. Moreover, although his opponent's slash looked like a brute's, it was actually a hidden sword technique. If he were to take it head-on, he might die if he was not careful. The old man was extremely fast, and in an instant, he had already retreated over 10 away. Once again, Yi Xian's saber slashed through thin air. Although he had slashed through thin air, Yi Xian was excited. He had just discovered something very interesting. Hidden sword style. Although it was called a saber, it was actually a sword technique. To put it simply, it was using a saber on the surface and hiding the tip of the sword. Then, at the crucial moment, it would catch the opponent off guard. Just like earlier, he had cut off 2 of the old man's fingers with a single slash, and that was when he was unprepared. If he had been prepared, there was a high chance that the slash would have taken the old man's life. Yi Xian looked at the old man, and in the next moment, he dashed towards him again. From the looks of it, Yi Xian really did look like a saber cultivator. Seeing that Yi Xian was charging towards him, the old man's expression changed slightly. He stomped his right foot on the ground and threw a punch with his right hand. Obviously, he was prepared to use his strength to defeat all opponents. No matter how exquisite the opponent's sword technique was, so long as he had sufficient strength, then he could destroy it with a single punch. When facing the old man's punch, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and then the saber in his hand slashed towards the old man at an extremely strange angle. A flying sword. No, it was a flying saber now. On the other hand, Yi Xian's body smashed directly towards the old man. Bang! In an instant, the old man was blasted over 100 m away, and when he stopped, one of his ears was gone. It had been slashed off by Yi Xian's flying saber. Moreover, if he had been a little slower just now, then it wouldn't have been just his ear that had been chopped off, it would have been his head instead. Yi Xian restrained his thoughts, and then he walked towards the old man with his saber in hand. He was getting more and more excited as the battle went on. As expected, only battles could improve one's strength the best. Fight! Yi Xian charged towards the old man once more. The old man's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene. Wait a moment. However, Yi Xian didn't stop. On the contrary, he sped up. Soon, he came directly to the top of the old man's head and slashed down again. Behind the blade, there was a hidden sword move. The old man could see the sword move, so he didn't choose to fight head-on and retreated again. Avoiding battle. The best thing for him to do now was to avoid battle, otherwise, he would have to fight to the death with Yi Xian. At this moment, he was already stunned by Yi Xian's attack. Who the hell is this guy in front of me? Seeing that Yi Xian still wanted to attack, the old man suddenly said angrily, "What the hell do you want to do?" Yi Xian said, "Fight." The old man said angrily, "Isn't it just 10 odd crystals? Are you crazy, 10 odd crystals?" Yi Xian was stunned and then said, "Isn't it 100? 100. The old man flew into a rage. "Boy, you dare to blackmail the old man." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "If you don't give, then fight." After saying that, he directly rushed towards the old man. The old man said angrily, "You're courting death." As his voice fell, he also rushed towards Yi Xian. Just like that, the two of them fought again. This time, the old man was obviously fighting with his life on the line. He began to fight back and forth with Yi Xian. However, the more Yi Xian fought, the more excited he became and the more desperate he became. He was like this, as long as he fought, he would risk his life. During that time in Qing City, if you didn't risk your life, you would die. As long as you put yourself in a dead end, you might be reborn. Just like that, after fighting for almost half an hour, both of them were already riddled with wounds. However, the old man's condition was more serious than Yi Xian's. His body was covered with knife wounds and blood was flowing. At this moment, an explosion suddenly sounded. Boom! The old man and Yi Xian separated upon contact and both of them retreated more than 100 feet. Yi Xian was about to rush forward again when the old man said fiercely, "Have you ever thought about the consequences?" Consequences? Yi Xian looked at the old man. "What are the consequences?" The old man looked at Yi Xian coldly. "If you stay here, the old man can toy with you to death." Yi Xian grinned. "Are you threatening me?" The old man stared at Yi Xian. "Who the hell are you?" In fact, at this time, he already had the intention to retreat. The rash young man in front of him was so powerful, and he was also a swordsman. The people behind this kind of person were definitely not simple. They might even be a group of swordsmen. Thinking of this, the old man waved his right hand and the 10 odd crystals flew in front of Yi Xian. I'll return it to you. Yi Xian said angrily, it's 100. The old man said fiercely, don't push your luck. Yi Xian said, then I'll give you a discount, 50. The old man stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak when the old man suddenly said, sure. After speaking, he waved his right hand and 50 odd crystals appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 768. Really? Yi Xian was a little stunned. He originally wanted to kill them all. Not to mention being cruel, in this kind of place, not being cruel to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. After the old man gave Yi Xian 50 odd crystals, he turned around and soon disappeared into the distance. Yi Xian looked at the 50 odd crystals in his hand. After a while, he found Zhang Qing and took out 10 for her. Zhang Qing didn't accept it. These are yours. Yi Xian smiled and said, keep it. There may be a lot of things I need to trouble you with in the future. Zhang Qing shook her head, if there's anything you don't understand, just ask me, I don't want it. If you want to give more, then I'll take my leave. Hearing this, Yi Xian thought for a while, then put away the odd crystals and smiled, Miss Zhang, let's talk somewhere else. Zhang Qing nodded. Soon, the two left. After the old man who fought with Yi Xian left, he returned directly to the city. Finally, he came to a large hall. Just as he was about to go in, a man in black blocked in front of him. The city lord is seeing a guest. The old man bowed slightly, please inform the city lord that I have something to see him about. The man in black did not answer. The old man hesitated for a while and then said, then I'll wait. With that, he retreated to the side. He originally wanted to start targeting Yi Xian, but in the end, he still wanted to confirm the origin of Yi Xian. In this place, some people could be offended and some people could never be offended. At this moment, there were 2 women sitting in the hall. A woman in a purple shirt and a woman in a green dress. The woman in the green dress was the owner of this city. The woman in the green dress smiled and said, Al Yen, how long has it been since we last met? The woman in the purple dress smiled slightly, not long, just a few decades. With that, she glanced at the woman in the green dress, Xiaocang, you've improved quite fast to reach this level. Xiaocang. This woman was the city lord of the city, Mu Xiaocang. The woman in a green dress was slightly stunned, and then she said in a light voice, it has been many years since someone called me by that name. Al Yen smiled, that's true. You're the governor of Hidden Edge City now, who would dare to call you that? Mu Xiaocang said softly, recently, the 4-dimensional universe has not been peaceful. Al Yen smiled, you mean the black-yellow great world? Mu Xiaocang nodded. One of the gods of the temple was killed. The stronghold that the temple left in the Xuanhuan Great World was completely uprooted. She then looked at Al Yen. All of this has to do with the man you brought with you. Yi Xian. Al Yen smiled and said, you should know that he has a 5th-dimensional treasure, right? Mu Xiaocang nodded. Yes. Al Yen picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. You're tempted. Mu Xiaocang smiled and said, who wouldn't be tempted by a treasure of the 5th dimension? She then looked at Al Yen. Can I snatch it? Al Yen nodded. Yes. Mu Xiaocang squinted her eyes and did not speak. Al Yen smiled, if you aren't afraid that your Hidden Edge City's tens of thousands of years of foundation will be destroyed, go ahead. Mu Xiaocang said in a low voice, Al Yen, tell me the truth, who is he? Many people have investigated Yi Xian, but no one could find out anything. Al Yen looked at Mu Xiaocang, that thing is not something you can think about. Even if you obtain it, it will bring disaster upon you. Mu Xiaocang was silent. Lian smiled and said, I know that your hidden edge city is not weak, and your ancestral master is still alive, but, she then shook her head, as a friend, I have said what I need to say. Choose for yourself. Mu Xiaozong said in a low voice, if I become his enemy, which side will you stand on? Lian shook her head and sighed, looks like you still don't want to give up. Mu Xiaozong walked in front of Lian and grabbed her hand. Lian, you saved my life in the past, and I have always treated you as a friend, my only friend. This thing is very important to my hidden edge city, you can choose not to help me, but don't interfere in this matter, okay? Lian looked at Mu Xiaozong, do you know who is behind him? Mu Xiaozong said, a woman in a plain dress, and another woman, these two. Lian asked again, do you know the strength of the woman in the plain dress? Mu Xiaozong shook her head, I don't know the specifics, but she should be at least in the Fate Realm. Fate Realm. Lian shook her head and smiled, you know about the Fate Realm, Mu Xiaozong said in a low voice, why, is it above it? Lian turned around to look at the horizon and softly said, in this world, there are some people whose strength cannot be measured by their realm. I know you are tempted by that fifth-dimensional treasure. Not only you, but there are also some messy powers tempted by it. I also know I can't persuade you. If you want to make a move, then make a move. But you'll have to bear the consequences. After she finished speaking, she walked out of the hall. Within the hall, Mu Xiaozong was silent. At this moment, a black-clothed old man appeared behind Mu Xiaozong. City Lord, should we make a move? Mu Xiaozong was silent. The black-clothed old man said in a low voice, this person is currently in the variant battlefield. If we make a move, even that woman in purple won't be able to stop us. Mu Xiaozong said softly, don't underestimate her. The black-clothed old man hesitated for a moment, then said, I'm afraid this person will ruin things. Mu Xiaozong was silent for a long time, then said, don't touch him for now. The black-clothed old man hesitated for a moment, then nodded, all right. He paused for a moment, then said, City Lord, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mu Xiaozong said softly, how strong is the divine temple? The black-clothed old man said, strong. Mu Xiaozong glanced at the black-clothed old man, but one of their gods was killed. And now, the divine temple hasn't made a move at all. The black-clothed old man was silent. Mu Xiaozong looked outside the hall, I know Lian's personality very well, and she disdains lying. What she said earlier is definitely true. If my hidden edge city touches him, then even if we obtain that precious treasure, I'm afraid our hidden edge city won't be able to bear the price. When she spoke up to this point, she stood up and walked to the entrance of the hall, then she gazed at the distant horizon and said softly, but I'm truly unwilling to give up just like that. After all, it's right before my eyes. The black-clothed old man behind her fell silent. Mu Xiaozong remained silent for a moment, then she said softly, I never expected that I would have such greed and obsession as well. Send my orders, our people are not allowed to act against him. The black-clothed old man turned around and left when he heard this. Meanwhile, the old man who had been waiting outside the hall for a long time hurriedly arrived behind Mu Xiaozong. City Lord, I have something to report. Mu Xiaozong said, speak. The old man spoke solemnly, the newcomer, Yi Xian, he. Mu Xiaozong suddenly said, you can't touch him. The old man gazed at Mu Xiaozong, and the latter said softly, you can leave. The old man hesitated for a moment before he nodded, I understand. When he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Inside the alien battlefield, Yi Xian followed Zhang Qing back to the village where they were before. At the entrance of the village, Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian who was sitting on the ground not far away, you're too impulsive. Yi Xian smiled, I know what Miss Zhang wants to say, endure it for a while, and everything will be fine. Zhang Qing nodded, it's not a bad thing to endure it. Yi Xian said softly, to me, it's a bad thing. As he said this, he shook his head and smiled, I'm someone who can't stand being bullied. Zhang Qing said in a low voice, he will take revenge on you. Yi Xian smiled, I won't easily make enemies, but I'm not afraid of them either. When he finished speaking, he slowly closed his eyes. Reflect. In the battle with the old man just now, he still had some mistakes. Now, he wanted to sum up and see how many mistakes he had made. At the side, Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian. At this moment, the feeling that Yi Xian gave her was like a sharp sword showing off its edge. The sword showed off its edge, insufferably arrogant. Was this a good thing? Not necessarily a good thing. The sword was hard and easy to break. Zhang Qing shook her head slightly and turned around to leave. About an hour later, Yi Xian stood up. He picked up the big saber on the ground and the corner of his mouth curled up slightly. Just now, he had comprehended a move, sword concealment. Hiding the blade of the sword, not unsheathing the sword, but once the sword was unsheathed, it would definitely kill. This was his concept of sword concealment. However, this move still needed to be practiced. When to unsheath the sword, how to unsheath the sword, this was a very profound knowledge. Details and timing were very important. Yi Xian looked at Zhang Qing, who was not far away. Miss Zhang, I'm going to challenge. Zhang Qing glanced at Yi Xian. I'll go with you. Yi Xian nodded. All right. The two of them walked towards the sparring ring again. On the way, Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Zhang Qing, are there any swordsmen around here? Zhang Qing nodded. Yes, but very few, maybe only 2 or 3. 2 or 3. Yi Xian nodded. He really wanted to spar with a swordsman now. In the black-yellow great world, every time he sparred with Little Seven, he would gain a lot. Now, he wanted to see another swordsman. Every swordsman had a different style. Soon, the two of them arrived at the ring again. At this time, the old man who had left earlier had returned. Seeing Yi Xian, the corner of the old man's eye twitched. It was this person again. He naturally did not dare to have any crooked thoughts. He did not know where Yi Xian came from or what his identity was. All he knew was that Mu Xiaocang had spoken. Yi Xian walked to the ring and glanced at the old man. Do you want to take revenge on me? The corner of the old man's eye twitched as he stared at Yi Xian. If you want to challenge, then challenge. If not, then go down. Yi Xian shrugged and waved his right hand. 10 odd crystals landed in front of the old man. The old man waved his right hand and a blue halo suddenly disappeared into the distant sky. A moment later, on the ground to the right of the old man, a blue halo suddenly appeared. Then, a young man appeared in front of the two of them. The old man said indifferently, Let's begin. The winner will get 20 odd crystals. Begin. After speaking, he turned and disappeared. Yi Xian looked at the man who was wearing a luxurious robe and holding a wooden spear in his right hand. Spear cultivator. The man with the spear bowed slightly. I am Li Xing, how should I address you? Yi Xian returned the bow and was about to speak when Li Xing suddenly made a move. He pointed his spear at Yi Xian's throat as fast as lightning. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 769. Yi Xian was slightly stunned when he saw the spear-wielding man suddenly attack. Isn't this a trick that I often play? He didn't think too much about it. He flashed backwards and dodged the spear. Li Xing didn't stop. He held the spear in his right hand and thrust it forward. Hiss. The sound of something tearing resounded. Meanwhile, Yi Xian held the saber with both hands and slashed it forward. Head on. Bang. As soon as the saber and spear came into contact, Li Xing retreated repeatedly while Yi Xian stopped after moving over 3 back. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly as he gazed at Li Xing, who stood in the distance. In the next moment, he suddenly tossed the saber in his hand forward. Hiss. The sound of the air exploding resounded. Li Xing's expression changed drastically as he stood before Yi Xian. This time, he didn't dare go head-on against Yi Xian's saber because his strength was inferior to Yi Xian. Li Xing chose to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. He retreated with the intention of avoiding Yi Xian's attack. However, his retreat instantly weakened his momentum. Yi Xian had suddenly appeared behind the saber, and he held the saber in his hand as he somersaulted in the air and slashed down once more. Hiss! This strike seemed as if it was going to split the ground apart, and it was extremely shocking. Li Xing's eyes narrowed slightly as he stood before Yi Xian. At this moment, there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. He didn't dare be careless. Li Xing stomped his right foot and charged forward like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. The spear in his hand stabbed straight towards Yi Xian's throat. The longer it was, the stronger it was. He wanted to force Yi Xian to retract his saber. If Yi Xian didn't retract his saber, then his spear would have the advantage. Because the spear was long. His thoughts weren't wrong. However, Yi Xian didn't retract his saber. He suddenly swung the saber horizontally and slashed at the spear. Bang! The powerful force slashed the spear askew. At the same time, Yi Xian seized the opportunity to slash down with his spear. But right at this moment, Li Xing had already retreated over 30 m away. Yi Xian did not stop. He held the saber with both hands and slashed forward. Chi! Wherever the blade passed, it was invincible. Opposite to Yi Xian, Na Xian's pupils shrank. He suddenly turned around and swept out the spear in his hand. A head-on clash. He could only meet force with force, because if he retreated any further, he would be completely suppressed. He had to force back Yi Xian's saber momentum and destroy Yi Xian's saber edge. Boom! An explosion suddenly resounded. Li Xing instantly retreated explosively, and this retreat caused him to directly retreat to the edge of the arena. In the distance, Yi Xian was about to attack again when Li Xing suddenly said, "I admit defeat." Just as he finished speaking, Yi Xian's saber stopped a few dozen inches above his head. As for Li Xing, blood was flowing from his mouth. Because he was directly injured by that saber strike just now. It was very heavy. Yi Xian looked at Li Xing. He did not expect that this guy would admit defeat directly. Yi Xian thought for a moment and sheathed his saber. He had no enmity with Li Xing, so there was no need to kill him. After all, he was here to train himself, not to make enemies everywhere. Seeing Yi Xian sheath his saber, Li Xing immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He glanced at Yi Xian. "Thank you." Yi Xian nodded. "Your spear art is not bad. Let's practice again when we have time." Li Xing nodded. "All right." Saying that, he looked at Yi Xian. "How should I address you?" After saying that, his expression became a little awkward. Because when Yi Xian was about to introduce himself, he directly attacked. To put it nicely, it was a surprise attack. To put it bluntly, it was despicable and shameless. Yi Xian smiled. "Yi Xian." Li Xing nodded. "Yi Xian's saber art is fierce and incomparably powerful. When I have time, I will ask Brother Yi for advice again. Goodbye." After saying that, he turned and left. Yi Xian walked to the old man at the side. The latter did not talk nonsense and directly took out 20-odd crystals for Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head. "I want to continue the challenge." "Continue the challenge." The old man narrowed his eyes. "You still want to continue?" Yi Xian nodded. "Continue." "Fight." Now, he was eager to fight. Especially after the improvement of his sword Dao realm, he wanted to fight even more. Only through battle could he become stronger. Especially at this time, without external objects or divine skills, this was the best opportunity for him to improve. Because there were no impurities in this improvement. Just like just now, he fought so many rounds with Li Xing. If it was outside and he was holding the executing heaven sword, the other party might not even be able to take one strike from him. Unless the other party had a divine sword comparable to the executing heaven sword. And if he used the infinite sword, external objects. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly. He had to say that his strength was very fake in the past. Because that was not his true strength. If he gave the executing heaven sword to others and the infinite sword to others, others could also achieve the effect he achieved. Therefore, apart from these external objects and divine skills, that was his true strength. In front of Yi Xian, the old man said in a deep voice, "Going too far is as bad as falling short. Going too far is as bad as falling short." Yi Xian knew what the other party meant and smiled slightly. "Thank you for the reminder, but I can still fight now. I haven't reached my limit yet." The old man glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. He waved his right hand and a blue halo flew out. Obviously, it was to match an opponent for Yi Xian. Soon, a man in white appeared in the ring. Just like that, the battle started again. In the following time, Yi Xian fought crazily every day. Except for taking a break in the middle, he was always fighting. During this period, he also encountered one or two strong opponents and was almost defeated. He was really almost defeated. This made him even more excited. Failure was not scary. Most of the time, only failure could let you know your shortcomings. Therefore, every time he failed, he was not discouraged. Instead, he was excited. And the more he fought, the stronger the opponents he encountered. Hidden Edge City, the city lord's mansion. Mu Xiaozang sat in front of the main hall with a secret note in her hand. This secret note recorded all the information about Yi Xian. Almost everything that had happened to Yi Xian in the eyes of the world was recorded. Behind Mu Xiaozang, a black-robed old man said in a deep voice, "Miss. This Yi Xian is indeed very mysterious, especially about his father. There are no records at all. Apart from that, he knows the patriarchs of the major forces in the black-yellow great world. This is very strange. Because those people were peak figures from thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago. Why would they know Yi Xian? Apart from that, the most mysterious person should be that plain-dressed woman." Plain-dressed woman. Mu Xiaozang squinted her eyes. "Do you have any information about her?" The black-robed old man shook his head. "There is very little information about her. Her background, her strength, the forces behind her. We know nothing." Mu Xiaozang clutched the information in her hand and kept quiet. A moment later, she stood up and left. She came to a small tavern in the city. At the moment, Al Yen was drinking in front of the tavern. Mu Xiaozang sat in front of Xiao Lian. "Can 10 Earth Immortals kill that plain-dressed woman?" 10 Earth Immortals. Such a lineup could only be described as terrifying. Al Yen smiled. "What do you think of my strength?" Mu Xiaozang said in a deep voice, "Very strong. Earth Immortals are no match for you." Al Yen laughed. "Even 100 of me won't be able to defeat her." "No. It doesn't matter how many of me there are." Mu Xiaozang squinted her eyes. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible." Al Yen took a sip and smiled. "Impossible? Xiaozang, don't do anything stupid. Or else you will regret it." Mu Xiaozang said in a deep voice, "Who is she?" Al Yen said softly. "A woman scarier than gods and demons. You should thank the Yi Xian. If it wasn't for him, this world would be gone. Because he is the only one in this world who can make this woman feel kind towards this world." She knew that those who had never met the plain-dressed woman would never know how terrifying she was. This woman was filled with malice towards this world. She only cared about one person, and that was Yi Xian. If Yi Xian died, Al Yen shook her head. "That little scourge." Mu Xiaozang was silent for a moment before she said, "I will give up." Al Yen looked at Mu Xiaozang and the latter said softly, "Because you won't lie to me. This is the first time I've seen fear in your eyes." Fear. When Al Yen mentioned the plain-dressed woman, she noticed that aside from deep wariness, there was also fear in Al Yen's eyes. Someone who could make Al Yen afraid, she gave up completely. As Al Yen said, if she obtained it, the consequences would be unbearable for her and Hidden Edge City. Al Yen glanced at Mu Xiaozang. Greed and ambition aren't bad things at times, but they are the ones that will kill you. Don't be that little guy's enemy. His enemy is someone else, someone stronger, like the people in the fifth dimension. Do you understand? Mu Xiaozong said in a low voice. We are not worthy of being his enemy. All Yen shook her head. You are not worthy of being that plain-dressed woman's enemy. She hasn't come out yet because she has someone else to deal with. Of course, there is another reason. She really looks down on the experts of this world. She really doesn't. She shook her head and smiled. This woman, Mu Xiaozong said in a low voice. All Yen, how strong is she? All Yen shook her head. I don't know. In this world, among the people I know, there are only 2 people who can make her use her second sword. And both of them are related to that little guy. Mu Xiaozong's face turned ugly. You mean, they threw him into this world to let the experts of this world train him? All Yen was silent. Seeing this, Mu Xiaozong's face turned even uglier. All Yen suddenly said. Actually, his situation is more difficult than you think, because there are too many people who want him dead. Her eyes flashed with worry as she said this. The plain-dressed woman is very strong, but her weakness is Yi Xian. And those people are using Yi Xian to restrain the plain-dressed woman. Now, the plain-dressed woman is waiting for Yi Xian to become strong enough. As long as Yi Xian can protect himself, then she will start a massacre. Chapter 770. Suddenly, it started raining. The sound of the rain grew louder in front of the tea house. The 2 women did not leave. Both of their expressions were solemn. All Yen took a sip of wine and smiled. How is he now? Mu Xiaozong said, challenging others like crazy and improving rapidly. All Yen nodded, a good seedling with a good temperament and ambition. Mu Xiaozong looked at All Yen. When are we taking him away? All Yen smiled, scared. Mu Xiaozong nodded, yes. Because some people have come to Hidden Edge City and they are not friendly. All Yen said, give him some time. Mu Xiaozong nodded and left. But she stopped after a few steps. All Yen, some people are investigating you. All Yen smiled, it's fine. Mu Xiaozong nodded and disappeared into the rain. After Mu Xiaozong left, an old man walked over. He sat in front of All Yen and was about to speak when All Yen waved her right hand. Bam! The old man was thrown a few hundred meters away. All Yen glanced at the old man whose expression changed. Did I say you could sit? The old man stared at All Yen. Your Excellency, our target is the Yi Xian. All Yen shook her head. I don't understand. Why do you always come after him? Can't you use some brains? Have you thought of a way to deal with that plain-dressed woman? Or are you saying that you have already found out about her background? Even if you want to be a bad person, use some brains, all right? The old man's face turned sour. Your Excellency, All Yen suddenly said, scram. The old man stared at All Yen. Your Excellency will regret this. Then, he turned and left. But at this moment, All Yen suddenly appeared in front of him and before he could react, All Yen grabbed him by the throat. The old man was shocked. He did not expect that he could not fight back at all. The old man was about to speak when All Yen clenched her fist. Bam! The old man turned into nothingness. All Yen slowly walked back to the tea house and drained the cup on the table. You don't have the strength and you still want to drink? Idiot. Alien battlefield. At this moment, Yi Xian was lying on the ground. His entire body was covered in wounds of all kinds. At first glance, it was a horrible sight. During this period of time, he had been challenging crazily every day. Fight. They were fighting all the time. In this alien battlefield, 80% of the people had already been challenged by him. More wins than losses. Defeat. Right now, he liked to lose, because every time he lost, he would gain a huge improvement. During this period of time, he had gained too much. Yi Xian closed his eyes and absorbed the odd crystal to heal himself. During this period of time, he had obtained hundreds of odd crystals because of various challenges. In this place, this was a huge fortune. While he was healing, Yi Xian began to recall his previous matches. During this period of time, he understood another principle. When you think that you have reached your limit, you can actually do better. There was no real limit. Next to Yi Xian, Zhang Qing was also healing. Because of Yi Xian's influence, she was also challenging crazily. Of course, she was not as crazy as Yi Xian. Yi Xian was simply a battle maniac. He would challenge as long as he had time every day. Now many people in this place were already afraid of him. Because Yi Xian was too crazy. If Yi Xian was defeated by someone, then the next person would be miserable. Because Yi Xian would challenge him crazily, until he won. Now, Yi Xian had a nickname in this alien battlefield, Battle Maniac Little Madman. About an hour later, Yi Xian suddenly sat up. At this moment, his injuries were almost healed. Yi Xian glanced at Zhang Qing, who was not far away. Zhang Qing was still healing, so he did not disturb her and turned to leave. Soon, Yi Xian came to the arena and took out all his odd crystals for the old man. Fight the strongest one. His goal during this period of time was the person ranked first here. However, he could not challenge the other party at first because he did not have enough odd crystals. Challenging that person once would cost at least 300 odd crystals. The old man glanced at Yi Xian. Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. The old man hesitated and then said, the current you may not be able to beat the other party. Yi Xian smiled and said, it's okay. The old man nodded. Okay. After saying that, he waved his right hand and a blue light flew out. After a moment, the old man said in a deep voice, you may have to wait. Yi Xian smiled and said, okay. After saying that, he walked to the side and closed his eyes to rest. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and was silent. During this period of time, he had witnessed the growth of Yi Xian with his own eyes. It could be said that Yi Xian's growth was too terrifying. The most important thing was that Yi Xian's determination and ruthlessness could not be compared to ordinary people. Approximately half an hour later, a woman suddenly appeared on the martial arts arena. The woman was about 20 years old and wore a long white dress. She was spotless and looked like a snow fairy. In her hand, she held a long saber with a scabbard. The saber was 3 feet long and the scabbard was engraved with a snow lotus. On the hilt of the saber, there were several snowflakes fluttering. Her black hair was tied into a ponytail that reached her buttocks. On her forehead, 2 strands of bangs fluttered gently and her expression was cold like a piece of ice. Li Dao. Below, there were exclamations. Li Dao. In this foreign battlefield, she was a legend, a real legend. Because when she came in, she fought all the way from the last place to the first place and she only used less than a day. Not only that, at that time, the second place was defeated by her with only 1 saber. Just 1 saber. Therefore, in this foreign battlefield, she was also known as Li Dao. Because until now, no one could force her to use a second saber. Her current opponents were all great demons deep in the mountains, those powerful great demons. It had been a long time since she appeared on the martial arts arena. And now, the battle maniac Yi Xian had found her, there would be a good show to watch. Below, there were more and more people. Li Dao looked at Yi Xian, her expression was cold. Attack. Attack. Strong confidence. Yi Xian opened his palm and the big saber appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he directly rushed towards Li Dao. Li Dao looked at Yi Xian. There was not the slightest ripple in her eyes. Soon, Yi Xian got close to Li Dao. At this time, Li Dao suddenly pulled out her saber. The saber slashed out like lightning, disappearing in a flash. Chi! In the arena, a cutting sound rang. Li Dao turned and left. Defeated? In the arena, everyone looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, there was a saber scar between Yi Xian's eyebrows. defeated. In the arena, everyone shook their heads and sighed. There was still no one who could force Li Yidao to attack a second time. Not even this crazy Yi Xian. But at this moment, Li Yidao, who was not far away, suddenly stopped. She touched her throat. Unknowingly, there was a small cut there, and blood slowly flowed out. Seeing this scene, everyone in the arena was stunned. The tables turned. At this moment, everyone in the arena suddenly understood, both of them had held back. Otherwise, that exchange just now, both of them would die. Li Yidao turned around, she looked at Yi Xian. Swordsman. Yi Xian nodded. Li Yidao walked to a place not far from Yi Xian. Continue. Continue. She was going to attack a second time. Yi Xian looked down. Who has a sword? Lend me your sword. Facing Li Yidao, he could not use the hidden sword anymore because this move could only be used once. And he could not use the wooden sword, under the same situation. If he used the wooden sword to fight against the real sword of the opponent, he would die without leaving a single scrap. Under the situation of strength suppression, he could use all things as a sword, because even if he did not use a sword, she would not be able to defeat him. But in front of him, the strength of this woman was not weaker than him, in fact, she was even stronger than him. At this moment, a man suddenly said, "Lend me your sword." As his voice fell, his right hand tossed, and an iron sword steadily landed in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian took the sword, and then looked at Li Yidao in front of him. Begin. As his voice fell, he suddenly stabbed forward. This stab was so fast that it was invisible to the naked eye. In front of Yi Xian, Li Yidao suddenly drew her sword. Chi! A sharp tearing sound suddenly resounded, and then, Yi Xian instantly retreated a few dozen feet. But Li Yidao did not retreat even half a step. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Li Yidao, and another sword slash. Li Yidao did not dodge, holding the scabbard in his left hand slightly turned, and his right hand suddenly drew the sword and slashed. It was a head-on collision with Yi Xian's sword. Sword Dao, big and bold, focused on fierce and domineering. The harder the better. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly tilted his long sword, directly stabbing the corner of the big sword's blade, and in an instant, most of the power of the sword was dissipated. Boom! At this moment, both of them retreated at the same time. But in the blink of an eye, both of them suddenly disappeared. Boom! In the martial arts arena, rays of sword light and sword light constantly appeared, dazzling the eyes. In the arena, countless people became excited. A duel between experts. Moreover, it was a duel between a swordsman and a sword cultivator. Most importantly, both of them were competing in pure sword Dao and sword Dao, and this kind of duel was more exciting, more enjoyable to watch. In the martial arts arena, both of them fought back and forth, and were evenly matched. Needless to say, Yi Xian's sword Dao attainment was much stronger than before. If his sword Dao attainment had not reached the true state, he would definitely not be able to defeat this woman in front of him. Boom! At this moment, there was a sudden explosion in the arena, followed by Yi Xian and Li Yidao retreating at the same time, and in the process of retreating, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. Go! Swoosh! The flying sword in his hand turned into a sword light and flew out. He did not use qi to control the sword, but pure physical strength and strength. Not far away, Li Yidao suddenly blocked with his sword. Bang! Yi Xian's sword was instantly repelled, and at this time, Yi Xian suddenly appeared behind the sword, and he kicked the sword's hilt. Swoosh! The sword cut through the air. In the distance, Li Yidao took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. Boom! Yi Xian's sword was once again repelled, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Li Yidao. He grabbed the sword that was repelled, and then stabbed straight at Li Yidao's eyebrows. This sword was extremely fast. Li Yidao did not choose to block this time, because if she did, the momentum of the sword would weaken, so she directly chose to slash at Yi Xian's throat. Neither of them blocked, nor did they retreat. Swoosh swoosh. Two streams of blood suddenly splattered on the martial arts arena. Everyone. Chapter 771. Dead? Everyone in the field was stunned. Could it be that both of them perished together? On the stage, Li Dao's saber was stuck half an inch into Yi Xian's left rib while Yi Xian's sword was stuck between Li Dao's eyebrows. Both of them had held back. There was no deep hatred between them. It was just a sparring match. Therefore, neither of them chose to kill each other. Yi Xian sheathed his sword and Li Dao sheathed his saber. Yi Xian smiled. "You're strong." Li Dao glanced at Yi Xian. "You want to improve yourself?" Yi Xian nodded. Li Dao said, "Follow me." After that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before returning the sword to the man from before. "Thank you, brother." After that, he turned around and followed her. In the field, everyone looked at each other. Not long after, Yi Xian followed Li Dao to a mountain range. On the way, Li Dao said, "The beasts here have been through hundreds of battles. They will always have strong combat power and physical defense. If we want to defeat them, we can only rely on our wits and strength. If we spar with them, we will gain a lot." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before asking, "What level of beast are you looking for?" Li Dao said indifferently, "The strongest." "The strongest." Yi Xian was silent. He had seen the beasts here before. They were indeed strong. Since Li Dao brought him here, it was definitely not an ordinary beast. Battle. Yi Xian took a deep breath. During this period of time, his strength could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. The reason why he improved so quickly was because of the battles. Yi Xian looked at the mountain range in front of him. He did not have much time left. Because he had been out for too long. He knew that Temple would definitely not let this matter rest. He did not know when Temple's next attack would be. Therefore, he wanted to go back as soon as possible. However, before going back, he wanted to train. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He could imagine now, if he went out with the executing heaven sword. At this moment, Li Dao suddenly said, "Let's go. I'll choose one for you." After that, she walked towards the depths of the mountain range. Yi Xian followed. Not long after, Li Dao brought Yi Xian to a huge mountain. In front of the mountain was a demonic beast. The demonic beast was shaped like a tiger, with a pair of wings on its back, and its entire body was covered in black scales. Seeing Li Dao and Yi Xian walking over, the demonic beast glanced at them. "Shall we continue?" Li Dao said, "I'll change your opponent." The monster looked at Yi Xian. "Him?" Li Dao nodded. "That's him." The monster beast sized up Yi Xian, "Swordsman?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The demonic beast nodded. "Come." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Can I fight it however I want?" The beast nodded. "You can fight however you want." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." After that, he was about to attack. However, at this moment, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at Li Dao. "Miss Li, do you have a sword?" "A sword." Facing this demonic beast, he did not dare to be careless, let alone fight with his bare hands. What a joke. His current physical strength was incomparable to the outside world. Against such a demonic beast, he could only win with his wits. Li Dao glanced at Yi Xian. She pointed with her fingers and a long sword landed in front of Yi Xian. The sword was 4 feet long, and it was a very ordinary iron sword. Seeing this sword, Yi Xian became silent. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page, using this sword to break the demonic beast's defense. Difficult. However, this was also a test of his strength. Yi Xian walked towards the demonic beast while Li Dao retreated to the side. Learn. The reason why she brought Yi Xian to fight this demonic beast was because she wanted to see how Yi Xian would fight this demonic beast. All along, she had lost every time she fought with this demonic beast. There was no other way, it was a natural disadvantage. Now, she wanted to start from another angle to see how Yi Xian would fight and then learn from Yi Xian's failure. From afar, Yi Xian had already walked in front of the demonic beast. At this moment, the demonic beast suddenly raised its claws and slapped at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression changed. He dodged to the side and dodged the claw. Then, he rolled forward and was about to draw his sword. However, before he could draw his sword, the demonic beast charged at him. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian flew out along with his sword. This time, he flew for more than 10 feet. The moment Yi Xian stopped, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Not only that, the sword in his hand was broken. Absolute suppression of strength. Yi Xian looked at the demonic beast, but it had already returned to its original position. At this time, Li Dao suddenly said, "It has rich battle experience, don't underestimate it." Yi Xian nodded. He had already suffered a loss. At this time, Li Dao suddenly flicked her finger and a sword appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Li Dao. "Miss Li, are you selling your sword?" Li Dao said indifferently, "My previous spoils of war." Yi Xian nodded. He picked up his sword and rushed at the demonic beast again. This time, he increased his speed to the extreme. Winning with speed. However, he failed once again. The demonic beast's speed was even faster than his. As soon as he dashed out, the monster disappeared from where it stood. Immediately after, Yi Xian felt a powerful force crushing towards him. Yi Xian's expression changed. He stomped his right foot and dodged to the side. Boom! As soon as he dodged, the place where he was originally standing collapsed. As soon as he stopped, a claw slapped at him. This was not just speed, but also consciousness suppression. Because the demonic beast seemed to know that Yi Xian would dodge, it slapped at Yi Xian the moment it landed. This made it impossible for Yi Xian to dodge. Yi Xian could only block it with his sword. Boom! The sword in Yi Xian's hand instantly shattered into pieces. Then, his whole body flew out again. The demonic beast did not chase after him. Instead, it returned to its original position. It glanced at Yi Xian, not enough. In the distance, Yi Xian landed on the ground. The ground under his feet instantly exploded, and the cracks spread in all directions at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, the ground dozens of feet around Yi Xian became like a spider web. Blood flowed out from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth again. He looked at the demonic beast in the distance with a solemn expression. There was a trace of helplessness in his eyes. At this moment, he finally understood what it meant to be strong enough to defeat 10. No matter what fancy tricks you have, you can defeat everything with strength. In the face of absolute strength, everything else was fleeting. At this moment, Li Dao, who was not far away, suddenly flicked her finger and a sword appeared in front of Yi Xian. "Continue. Continue." Yi Xian's mouth twitched. This woman, seeing that Yi Xian did not move, Li Dao said, "Are we not going to fight anymore?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Have you fought it before?" Li Dao nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian asked again, "Did you win?" Li Dao glanced at Yi Xian, "I don't know. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page." Yi Xian. At this moment, the demonic beast suddenly said, "Do you still want to fight?" Yi Xian looked at the demonic beast and smiled, "Fight." As soon as he said that, he raised his sword and rushed out. Without a doubt, Yi Xian was crushed once again. However, after more than 10 failures, Yi Xian was getting stronger and stronger. Dodge. Yi Xian's fighting style was to dodge the demonic beast's strength crazily. From time to time, he would use his sword to touch the weak parts of the demonic beast. Unfortunately, his sword was still unable to cause any substantial damage to the demonic beast. However, it was not as easy for the demonic beast to crush him now. The current Yi Xian could already fight back and forth with the demonic beast. Not far away, Li Dao watched quietly. Gradually, her expression became solemn. At this moment, she realized one thing, and that was that Yi Xian was really too patient. In the battle with the demonic beast, Yi Xian was really patient. He could deal with the demonic beast for more than half an hour just to grind it down with one sword. During this half an hour, his nerves were as tense as a bowstring because he could not afford to make a single mistake. Not at all. Just like that, the man and the demonic beast fought for almost 2 hours. The sky gradually darkened, but Yi Xian and the demonic beast had no intention of stopping. At the side, Li Dao's gaze fell on the demonic beast. At this moment, she suddenly realized that this demonic beast was also very patient. Even after being tormented by Yi Xian, this demonic beast was still not anxious or impatient, a fight between immortals. Li Dao looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, she lowered her head slightly. If it was her, she wouldn't be able to hold on for so long because she lacked patience. Just like that, about an hour later, Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and so did the demonic beast. The demonic beast looked at Yi Xian, and there was a trace of something else in its eyes. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Shall we take a break before fighting?" The demonic beast nodded, "Sure." After that, it retreated to the side. Yi Xian returned to Li Dao's side, and Li Dao whispered, "Aren't you tired?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "What's there to be tired about? I feel excited." Excited. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He liked fighting more and more now. He liked the feeling of fighting. Li Dao glanced at Yi Xian. "Your swordsmanship has reached the true state." "No, it should be the limit of the true state." "Limit?" Yi Xian shook his head, "Not yet. I feel that I still have a lot of room for growth." As he said that, he looked at the sword in his hand. At this moment, he felt that he had really touched the threshold of swordsmanship. It was just the beginning. Yi Xian put away his sword, sat cross-legged on the ground, and began to recover his vitality. The battle with the demonic beast just now had left him completely exhausted. He had to recover. Yi Xian began to absorb the odd crystal. On the side, Li Dao glanced at him and pondered. Just now, the battle between Yi Xian and the demonic beast made her understand a lot, especially her own shortcomings. Patience. She lacked Yi Xian's patience, and patience was often the key to victory. For example, if she and Yi Xian were to fight, if Yi Xian used the method just now, she would most likely be the one defeated. About half an hour later, Yi Xian got up, walked in front of Li Dao, and said with a smile, "I'm going to start." After that, he turned to look at the demonic beast, and at this moment, there was a sudden change. The space in front of the two suddenly tore open, and then, a powerful force directly sucked Yi Xian and Li Dao in. "How dare you!" At this moment, an angry roar suddenly resounded from the sky. End of this chapter. Chapter 772. Yi Xian and Li Dao were powerless against this sudden change of events. Because at this moment, their cultivation bases were sealed. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian and Li Dao disappeared into the spatial vortex. At practically the exact same moment, 2 women and an old man appeared here. They were the city lord of Hidden Edge City, Mu Xiaozang and Al Yen. The old man was an expert from Li Dao's family. The old man's expression was terrible. "City Lord Mu, aren't you going to give me an explanation?" Mu Xiaozang said, "Senior Li Nian, I didn't expect this to happen either. For many years, no one dared to make a move in Hidden Edge City. Even some ancient experts would give the city face. But now, someone was breaking the rules of Hidden Edge City." Al Yen suddenly said, "The temple." "The temple." Mu Xiaozang looked at Al Yen. "Did they do it?" Al Yen smiled. "No one else but them. I didn't expect them to be so decisive and send out such experts. They're also good at finding the right time. Making a move at this time, that little fellow doesn't have any strength to resist. Lin Yan suddenly looked at Al Yen. You're their target. Al Yen nodded. To be more precise, it's that little guy. Lin Yan said, he's the one who dragged Li Dao into this. As soon as he said that, a powerful pressure came crashing down on Al Yen. However, the aura disappeared before it could even get close to Al Yen. Lin Yan was shocked and a hint of wariness appeared in her eyes. Al Yen ignored Lin Yan and looked at Mu Xiaocang. Find out where they are. Then, she turned and left. Mu Xiaocang's expression was terrifyingly dark. Regret. She felt extremely regretful at the moment. She should have let Yi Xian go. Now, Hidden Edge City had no choice but to be dragged into this vortex. Mu Xiaocang turned and left. At this moment, Yi Xian and Mu Xiaocang's vision was pitch black and their surroundings were spinning. Teleportation. At this moment, he was slowly able to feel his own profound energy. Obviously, they had left the alien battlefield. After 15 minutes passed, Yi Xian was about to circulate his profound energy. Right at this moment, a ray of white light suddenly appeared in front of him, and in the next moment, it enveloped him completely. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian opened his eyes. At this moment, he had completely returned to normal, but there was a mysterious force that locked him. This force was even stronger than the sealing ability of the alternate battlefield. Right now, he could feel the Xian Qi, but he was unable to mobilize it. Yi Xian looked around. Beside him was Li Dao. At this moment, Li Dao's expression was extremely cold. At this moment, he and Li Dao were in front of a large hall. In front of the hall, there were 6 towering statues. He recognized these 6 statues. Temple of Light. At this moment, an old man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man wore a loose white robe and held a black staff in his hand. He looked rather sage-like. The white-robed old man glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Old man is Temple of Light's left oracle, Qiu Yu. On behalf of Temple of Light, old man welcomes Emperor Yi to the Divine City. Divine City. Yi Xian looked around and smiled. I'm not used to you being so polite. Qiu Yu smiled. Emperor Yi is an outstanding person. You should be respected. Yi Xian nodded, then looked at Li Dao. What happened between you and me has nothing to do with her. Let her go, is that all right? Qiu Yu smiled. Temple of Light will not target her. However, she cannot leave for the time being because the lady in purple beside you is very powerful. We do not want her to know your whereabouts for now. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He looked at Li Dao and smiled apologetically. Sorry for dragging you into this. Li Dao did not speak. Yi Xian looked at Qiu Yu. Are you sure you don't want to kill me? Qiu Yu smiled. Why would we kill Emperor Yi? We want to be friends with Emperor Yi. Friends? Yi Xian laughed. I'm a little curious now. Qiu Yu said, Emperor Yi, please. Yi Xian did not hesitate and walked towards the hall. Li Dao followed beside him. When Yi Xian entered the hall, there were only a few statues in the hall. Qiu Yu walked to one of the statues and bowed. Please. Yi Xian suddenly interrupted Qiu Yu. Want to talk? Qiu Yu turned and looked at Yi Xian. What does Emperor Yi want to talk about? Yi Xian smiled. You have investigated me, right? Qiu Yu nodded. I know almost everything about Emperor Yi. Yi Xian smiled. Then you should know that I have a sword technique, a very powerful one, right? Qiu Yu nodded. Immeasurable sword. A supreme technique from the 5th dimension. Unfortunately, Emperor Yi is unable to use it now. Otherwise, with Emperor Yi's strength, the old man would not be able to bring Emperor Yi here so easily. Yi Xian looked at Qiu Yu. Other than immeasurable sword, this pagoda also has some other functions. It can allow people to break through their limits and reach the legendary Fate realm. Qiu Yu squinted his eyes. Yi Xian continued, not only that, you can also enter the 5th dimension and go to a whole new world. Qiu Yu smiled. Are you trying to tempt the old man? Yi Xian smiled. I just want to tell you that this treasure has endless benefits. Look at me, before I was 18, I was ordinary. But after I got this treasure, look at my life, isn't it like cheating? Qiu Yu looked at Yi Xian without saying anything. Yi Xian waved his right hand and the prison pagoda suddenly appeared in front of Qiu Yu. Yi Xian smiled, it is right in front of you. As long as you are willing, it is yours. Qiu Yu glanced at the prison pagoda and smiled, you want to tempt the old man. Yi Xian looked at Qiu Yu, in this life, there are not many opportunities. If you don't grasp it, you don't know when the next one will come. Qiu Yu smiled, you are right. In this life, there are not many opportunities. However, there are some that can be grasped and some that cannot be coveted because it will lead to death. Finished speaking, he turned around and walked towards the statue. Yi Xian did not speak. At this time, Li Dao suddenly said, life as a slave. Hearing this, Qiu Yu suddenly stopped. Life as a slave. Qiu Yu was silent for a long time, then he suddenly turned to Li Dao and smiled, little girl, your words are sharp. Li Dao did not speak. Qiu Yu did not speak any nonsense. He directly grabbed the prison pagoda. The prison pagoda slightly trembled as if it wanted to struggle, but it was directly suppressed by Qiu Yu's powerful strength. Qiu Yu looked at Yi Xian, handing over the pagoda so easily, aren't you afraid that I will kill you? Yi Xian smiled, I won't. Qiu Yu asked, why? Yi Xian smiled, Senior is a smart person. You know that I am not on good terms with Deity's Templar. After you take this pagoda, you will also become Deity's Templar's enemy. At that time, the enemy of my enemy will be my friend, right? Qiu Yu laughed, what a good Yuang. However, you are willing to hand over the pagoda so easily? Yi Xian smiled, I am a swordsman. From today onwards, I will only need a sword. Qiu Yu stared at Yi Xian, true state sword intent. Congratulations. Yi Xian smiled, but did not speak. Qiu Yu turned and looked at the statue of the deity behind him. After a moment, he took a deep breath, how can I be a slave for life? With that, he turned into a black light and disappeared into the distant horizon. At the same time, Yi Xian and Li Dao returned to normal. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword appeared in his hand. Looking at the executing heaven sword in his hand, Yi Xian smiled, good friend. Saying that, he slowly closed his eyes. In his hand, the executing heaven sword trembled violently. The feeling of holding the executing heaven sword was completely different from before. That feeling, he could not describe it. At this time, Li Dao, who was not far from Yi Xian, suddenly said, your sword. Yi Xian looked at Li Dao, you know it? Li Dao said in a deep voice, is this sword the sword of the Black-Yellow Great World Sword Martial School's founder? Yi Xian was a little surprised, you know the Sword Martial School's founder? Li Dao nodded, I know Dao Yi a little. Back then, my Li family's divine sword was destroyed by this sword. Yi Xian was speechless. So there was such a history. He looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. He had to say, so far, there were very few treasures that could withstand the executing heaven sword. Li Dao suddenly said, this thing will make your country rely on it. Yi Xian nodded, I used to rely on it, but now, I know what I'm doing. Li Dao glanced at Yi Xian, let's go. Yi Xian said with a smile, why? Saying that, he looked around, this god city must have a lot of treasures. Saying that, he seemed to have thought of something and frowned, no, we have to go. Li Dao looked at Yi Xian, why? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, let's go. Saying that, he turned and left. Li Dao followed. On the way, Li Dao asked, what's wrong? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, that Qiu Yu is not stupid, but those so-called gods are not stupid either. Li Dao squinted his eyes, you mean, those gods might? Yi Xian nodded, let's go. Leave this god-forsaken place. Just as the two of them were about to leave the city, they suddenly stopped. The two of them looked not far away, and there, a woman was walking towards them. The woman wore a short skirt, and her hair was tied into a bun that reached her knees. At her waist, there was a short knife wrapped in coarse cloth, looking simple and crude. In her left hand, there was a Shao Ta, the world prison pagoda. And in her right hand, there was a bloody head. Qiu Yu's head. Qiu Yu's eyes were wide open, and they were filled with fear. It seemed like he must have experienced something before he died. The woman slowly walked towards Yi Xian and Li Yidao, a bright smile on her face. Yi Xian looked at the woman, his right hand tightly gripping the executing heaven sword. Li Yidao's hand was also on the hilt of his sword. At this moment, the woman suddenly stopped. She waved her right hand lightly, and the bloody head rolled to the feet of Yi Xian and Li Yidao. The woman leaned forward slightly, a bright smile on her face. Hi, hello. My name is Yuan Shaodao, and I'm what you call God. God. Hearing that, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. P.S. Yesterday, there were 2 more Alliance Masters. Thank you for the new Alliance Master support. Recently, the updates have not been good, and you guys still reward me like this. I'm ashamed. You guys know that I'm a thin-skinned person. Now, I don't even know where to put my face. It's the Mid-Autumn Festival, and I rarely go out with my family. I'll spend more time with my family in the future. Of course, I'll also work hard to update. Readers and family will not fail. Chapter 773. God. Yi Xian's expression turned ugly. He didn't expect a god to come. The main body had arrived. Not a clone. How strong was this god? He didn't know. He only knew that an expert of this level was definitely not someone he could contend with now, even if his strength had been greatly improved. God. The temple was serious this time. It was fine if they didn't come, but they came with such a big one. Yuan Shaodao looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Attack. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Shaodao. How about letting my friend leave? Yuan Shaodao looked at Li Yidao. Saber cultivator? Li Yidao nodded. Yuan Shaodao suddenly pointed at Li Yidao. Li Yidao narrowed her eyes and slashed with her saber. At this moment, Li Yidao, who had recovered his strength, swung his blade as fast as lightning. At the same time, a powerful blade intent enveloped Yuan Shaodao. However, the moment the blade intent enveloped Yuan Shaodao, it vanished without a trace. Li Yidao's saber was caught by 2 fingers. Li Yidao looked at Yuan Shaodao in front of her and didn't say anything. Yuan Shaodao grinned. Not bad. True realm saber intent. Let's go. After saying that, she released her fingers. Li Yidao put away her saber and looked at Yi Xian. Take care. After saying that, she turned and disappeared into the distance. Yuan Shaodao looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Attack. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Then he suddenly thrust his sword out. Boundless sword. This was the first time he used executing heaven's sword and boundless sword since coming out. At this moment, the power of his sword was stronger than ever before. This sword could easily kill an unknown realm expert. It was an instant kill. With his current attainments in Sword Dao, executing heaven's sword, and this sword, even an Earth Immortal wouldn't dare to take this sword head-on, let alone an unknown realm expert. However, facing such a powerful sword attack, Yuan Shaodao did not dodge at all. Instead, he put his fingers together and gently pinched Yi Xian's Scorpio sword between his fingers. This pinch caught Yi Xian's Scorpio sword. When the sword slashed down, the surroundings were extremely calm, without any movement. Because Yuan Shaodao had directly received all the power in Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Yuan Shaodao was slightly stunned. In the next moment, she lightly stomped her right foot. Boom! The space in an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers trembled violently before cracking apart. At the same time, her divine sense had already covered an area of almost 500,000 kilometers. However, Yi Xian seemed to have disappeared. There was no movement at all. Yuan Shaodao frowned. Where is he? As she spoke, she suddenly clenched her right fist. Boom! The space within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles exploded. Everything was annihilated at this moment. However, she still couldn't find Yi Xian. Yuan Shaodao looked around and smirked. Then let's play a game of cat and mouse. With that, she disappeared into thin air. At the end of the distant horizon, Yi Xian was in the depths of a lake. His expression was extremely grave. Before he left, the strength that Yuan Shaodao displayed was too terrifying. With a wave of her hand, the heavens fell and the earth cracked. God! This was the strength of a god. Her strength definitely surpassed an earth immortal. This woman was too terrifying. He couldn't beat her. Yi Xian took a deep breath. He looked at the executing heaven's sword in his hand and smiled bitterly. He didn't expect to encounter such a powerful person the first time he used the executing heaven's sword. This was truly a bad start. Yi Xian looked around and left quietly. He had to return to Hidden Edge City. He had to find the purple-clothed woman. Only the purple-clothed woman could go against this god. However, not long after, he found a fatal problem. He didn't know where he was. How could he get out? Yi Xian was confused. He didn't dare to travel through space because he was afraid of being discovered by Yuan Shaodao. There was another fatal problem, and that was the prison pagoda. The prison pagoda was originally in the hands of Qiuyu, but now it was in the hands of this woman. Since the prison pagoda hadn't returned, it was obvious that it couldn't return. The current prison pagoda wasn't at its peak. It probably couldn't do anything to an expert like Yuan Shaodao. This time, the pagoda was really lost. He didn't expect that a god from the temple would personally come. Previously, it was just a small one. Fortunately, the prison pagoda would automatically close. As long as she wasn't willing, even Yuan Shaodao wouldn't be able to enter easily. Yi Xian came back to his senses. He glanced around and then disappeared quietly. Along the way, Yi Xian tried to contact the woman in purple. However, he couldn't get in touch with her. He couldn't even contact the people from the black-yellow great world. Yi Xian's expression became even uglier. What the hell is this place? About 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived in the endless starry sky. This starry sky was no longer the starry sky he was familiar with. 4 hours later, Yi Xian exited the state of emptiness. This state wasn't permanent and had a time limit. Just as he exited the state of emptiness, the space in front of him suddenly tore open and a woman walked out. It was Yuan Shaodao. Yuan Shaodao looked at Yi Xian with a bright smile. Your concealment technique is really amazing. Even I can't find you. As expected of something from the fifth dimension. You. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly attacked with his sword. Boundless sword. Yuan Shaodao narrowed her eyes and waved her right hand. Boom. Yi Xian flew out along with his sword. However, the moment he flew out, he disappeared without a trace. He escaped into the state of emptiness once again. The moment Yi Xian disappeared, Yuan Shaodao suddenly slapped down. Boom. In an instant, the space within hundreds of thousands of kilometers was annihilated and turned pitch black. There was no trace of Yi Xian in the surroundings. Yuan Shaodao looked around. At this moment, her divine sense covered the space within hundreds of thousands of kilometers. However, she still couldn't find Yi Xian. Yuan Shaodao frowned slightly. What a good concealment technique. As she spoke, she opened her palm and the prison pagoda appeared in her hand. At this moment, there was a mysterious force suppressing the prison pagoda. Yuan Shaodao smiled. You must know where he is, right? There was no reaction from the prison pagoda. Yuan Shaodao looked at the prison pagoda and smiled. It doesn't matter if you don't tell me. I can find him. As she spoke, she turned and disappeared. On the other side, after Yi Xian stopped, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Not only that, but his entire body had cracked. The moment he escaped into the state of emptiness, the woman's spatial destruction had seriously injured him. This crazy woman. Yi Xian's expression was extremely gloomy. Healing. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and began to absorb the crystals. He was currently in the state of emptiness, so he couldn't find the woman for the time being. However, this state would disappear in a few hours. As long as it disappeared, the woman would be able to appear in front of him immediately. The current situation was truly hopeless. 2 hours later, Yi Xian got up and left. He began to slowly merge with space, wanting to familiarize himself with the space of this world and then use the Tao of space to escape. Another 2 hours passed, and Yi Xian began to familiarize himself with this space. He used the principles of space to find an exit. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived in front of a river. There was a mysterious force locking the space around the river, similar to a barrier. Yi Xian was about to use the Tao of space when his state of emptiness suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically when he noticed this. The space behind him suddenly split open, and then Yuan Xiaodao walked out. Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian and grinned. She was about to speak when a gourd suddenly appeared in Yi Xian's hand. The Immortal slaying sword gourd. In the next moment, Yi Xian's executing heaven sword transformed into a ray of light that entered the gourd. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian shouted furiously, "Slash!" The Immortal slaying sword gourd. This time, Yi Xian didn't hold back. He knew that his state of emptiness had ended, so he used the Immortal slaying sword gourd to catch Yuan Xiaodao off guard. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, the Immortal slaying sword gourd trembled violently, and then a ray of light suddenly flew out from it. At this moment, a sword howl resounded through the sky. As soon as it appeared, Yuan Xiaodao's expression instantly changed. It was the first time her expression had changed. The Immortal slaying sword gourd was the #1 precious treasure of the human race. Coupled with Yi Xian's sword, even a god would fear it. Yuan Xiaodao suddenly drew the saber on her waist when the sword slashed over. At this moment, she stopped being careless. She slashed with her saber. Bang! In an instant, a world-shaking explosion resounded, and then Yuan Xiaodao instantly retreated explosively. She retreated over 100 kilometers away, and the space she retreated to was obliterated inch by inch. As soon as Yuan Xiaodao stopped moving, the broken saber in her grasp had shattered into nothingness, and her entire right arm was covered in cracks that looked like spider webs. Yuan Xiaodao raised her head and looked towards the distance. Yi Xian had vanished without a trace. Yuan Xiaodao remained silent. At this moment, she noticed that this human wasn't an ant, and he could injure her. That strike just now was truly a threat to her. A short while passed before Yuan Xiaodao looked towards the distance, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. It's getting more and more interesting. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded in front of her. Since you've obtained that treasure, then there's no need to pay any more attention to Yi Xian. Quickly return to the ruins of gods. Yuan Xiaodao shook her head. He'll definitely become a huge problem for my divine hall if he isn't eliminated. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand and vanished on the spot. The sound of something being torn apart resounded from afar. Yi Xian was fleeing madly all along the way. At this moment, his expression was terrifyingly gloomy. The Immortal Slayer sword gourd and execution heaven had actually been unable to kill her. She was too terrifying. He couldn't defeat her. He couldn't defeat her. Yi Xian continued fleeing, but it didn't take long for him to stop. Because the space in front of him had suddenly split apart, and then Yuan Xiaodao walked out from within it. Yuan Xiaodao gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Don't force me to unleash my ultimate move. The corners of Yuan Xiaodao's mouth curled up slightly. Come, show me your ultimate move. Chapter 774. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Xiaodao and didn't say anything. The smile on Yuan Xiaodao's face became even more brilliant. Your immortal slaying sword gourd and executing heaven's sword are indeed very strong. I'm tempted by them. Yi Xian thought about it and said, I have a question. Can you answer it? Yuan Xiaodao smiled. Sure. Yi Xian nodded. Are you a human or a god? Yuan Xiaodao was slightly startled. Clearly, she didn't expect Yi Xian to ask this question. Yi Xian asked, You can't say it? Yuan Xiaodao smiled. They're all humans. The 6 statues you saw were all humans. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, Then why do you call yourselves gods? Yuan Xiaodao shook her head. It's not that we call ourselves gods. It's just that after we reached a certain level of strength, they called us gods. Later on, we realized that it wasn't a bad thing, so we built the shrine. You see, we didn't slaughter living beings after becoming gods, right? Yi Xian said, You sealed the black-yellow great world so that the human experts of the black-yellow great world can't break through to the unknown realm, right? Yuan Xiaodao smiled. Are you trying to stand on the moral high ground and criticize us? Yi Xian fell silent. Yuan Xiaodao smiled. Who doesn't seek benefits in this world? Did you, Yi Xian, not harm the interests of others when you built the northern region? As she said that, she shook her head. The right and wrong of this world are decided by fists. If you, Yi Xian, overturn my shrine in the future, then everything you say will be right. But now, everything you say is bullsh*t. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Yuan Xiaodao smiled. You asked me a question just now because you wanted to stall for time to heal. Have you healed your injuries? If not, I'll give you some more time. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Xiaodao. This woman actually knew that he was stalling for time. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and nodded. Give me an hour. With that said, he began to devour the origin crystals in a frenzy. While devouring, Yi Xian suddenly said, Why did you give me a chance? Yuan Xiaodao smiled and said, You want to ask me why I underestimated my enemy, right? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Yuan Xiaodao smiled and said, If I'm even afraid of you, then wouldn't all my years of cultivation have gone to waste? Confidence. Yi Xian understood. This woman was confident, and confidence was different from underestimating the enemy. She did not underestimate him, but she did not take him seriously either. He was still not strong enough. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and began to absorb the energy in a frenzy. At this moment, Yuan Xiaodao suddenly said, Where's that woman in a plain dress? Yi Xian looked at Yuan Xiaodao. You're going to look for her? Yuan Xiaodao shook his head. Someone will deal with her. My target is you. With that, she paused for a moment before continuing. What about the woman who killed a god in the black-yellow great world with a single sword strike? Yi Xian smiled and said, Guess. Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian and said, If I'm not wrong, she was not in her original body back then. She has either disappeared or is unable to fight for some reason, right? Yi Xian was silent. Yuan Xiaodao smiled and said, It seems that we guessed correctly. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Xiaodao and said, That's why you dared to make a move, right? Yuan Xiaodao said softly, I have to say, the person behind you is indeed very powerful. We are very afraid of him. She looked at Yi Xian and said, If it wasn't for the fact that the 5th-dimensional treasure is extremely important to us, we would not want to become enemies with you. Yi Xian smiled and said, Many people said that the 5th-dimensional treasure is extremely important to them, but do you really understand this treasure? Yuan Xiaodao shook her head and said, You don't understand the dual realm sky. That place is too tragic, dual realm sky. Yi Xian was silent. He had heard from Guan Jun that it was a place where countless supreme experts of the 4th dimension gathered. These people only had one goal, and that was to go to the 5th dimension. And now, there was a shortcut to the 5th dimension, and that was the World Prison Pagoda. There was no need to think about it to know that this would drive these people crazy. Yi Xian could already foresee that the Temple of Light was not the first and would not be the last to cause trouble for him. Yuan Xiaodao suddenly smiled and said, "It should be about time." Yi Xian stood up and looked at Yuan Xiaodao. The latter smiled and said, "You only have one chance." Yi Xian nodded. He closed his eyes slowly and murmured something. Very soon, the space around him started to tremble. Gradually, a mysterious force appeared in the area. When she sensed this mysterious power, Yuan Xiaodao's eyes narrowed and she looked at Yi Xian and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't give you another chance." As her voice fell, she suddenly disappeared. Chi! A strand of saber light flashed in the field. A saber of death. This saber was not something that Yi Xian could block. At this moment, Yuan Xiaodao directly made a killing move. The reason why she made a move was because she felt a trace of uneasiness. It was only a trace. If giving Yi Xian a chance before was because she was confident, then at this moment, she was being cautious. She did not hold back this saber. Not to mention Yi Xian, even an Earth Immortal would not be able to block this saber. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were blood red. God imprisoning. Six-path mantra. At this last moment, he finally decided to use the six-path mantra. One of the six-path mantra left behind by the owner of the pagoda, God imprisoning. He did not know if the God in the eyes of the owner of the pagoda was the same as the God in front of him. He only knew that if this move could not deal with this woman, then his life would end today. This was his last attack. If he did not succeed, he would die for a righteous cause. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian's face instantly turned pale, and he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. At the same time, a mysterious force suddenly enveloped Yuan Xiaodao. At the same time, a blood-red, imprisoned character appeared above Yuan Xiaodao. At this moment, Yuan Xiaodao was locked on the spot. After Yuan Xiaodao was locked in place, she intended to utilize her strength. However, she noticed to her astonishment that she was unable to utilize any strength at all. Yuan Xiaodao's eyes were filled with disbelief. What divine ability is that? Yi Xian was overjoyed when he saw this scene. It's effective. I'm invincible in the future. Right at this moment, the blood-red prisoner character above Yuan Xiaodao's head suddenly dimmed. Yi Xian was stunned. Meanwhile, Lian Xian suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian with the pagoda, and she spoke in a low voice, "This woman is too strong. You are unable to use the six-path mantra to take her into the pagoda, nor can you do so. Leave first." Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Lian Xian replied, "Because you've only utilized less than 30% of the six-path mantra's strength. Moreover, your six-Dao mantra is not complete, it's incomplete." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "Then I'll deal with her first." As soon as he finished speaking, he slashed his sword towards Yuan Xiaodao. However, he was stopped by Lian Xian. Lian Xian stared at Yi Xian and spoke via voice transmission, "If you can't kill her with that attack, then you'll die. Because your sword will destroy the laws of the six-path mantra. Now, it's impossible for you to kill her with your current strength. Even if she just stands there and lets you kill her, understand?" Yi Xian asked, "Put her in the pagoda?" Lian Xian replied with a question, "And then? How are you going to deal with her? Can you even defeat her?" Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Xian spoke in a low voice, "Leave first. Your body is extremely weak right now, and you need to recuperate." Yi Xian looked at Yuan Xiaodao, "Wait." As soon as he finished speaking, he walked in front of Yuan Xiaodao, "Remember, I'll let you go today. In the future, you'll have to repay my kindness. Otherwise, you'll lose face. Understand?" Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Xiaodao and turned to leave. He couldn't accept this. He was very, very unwilling. He really wanted to kill the other party with one sword, but his strength did not allow him to. This was the difference in strength. Even if the other party just stood there and let him kill her, he would not be able to kill her. Aggrieved. He had never felt so aggrieved before. Not long after, Yi Xian and Lian Xian quickly disappeared into the distance. In the same place, Yuan Xiaodao's expression was extremely ugly. P.S. Wait, send a red packet, remember to snatch it. Chapter 775. Lost. She lost the World Prison Pagoda. Yuan Xiaodao slowly closed her eyes, and a moment later, the word prisoner above her head disappeared. Her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Yuan Xiaodao raised her head to look into the distance. There was no anger in her eyes, only solemnity. Yi Xian had one trump card after another. It was beyond her expectation. Anger? Yuan Xiaodao wasn't angry. On the contrary, she rejoiced. Before coming, Deity's Templar's attention was focused on the two women behind Yi Xian. The plain-dressed woman and the woman who killed a god in the Xianhuang Great World. They had neglected Yi Xian. At this moment, she realized that Yi Xian wasn't weak at all. It could be said that if she hadn't come personally, apart from the other gods, anyone from Deity's Templar would have died. Yi Xian was so strong that only gods could deal with him. This was a very, very terrifying thing. Yi Xian's strength was growing too fast. Moments later, Yuan Xiaodao lowered her head to look at her palm. She was at a loss. At that moment, she really smelled the scent of death. If it wasn't for Yi Xian's low realm, Yi Xian's divine ability could have killed her. Fear. When she was locked by the prisoner character, a fear that hadn't appeared in a long time rose in her heart. After a long time, Yuan Xiaodao turned and left. Yi Xian brought the World Prison Pagoda back to Hidden Edge City. As soon as he entered, Al Yan and Mu Xiaocang appeared in front of him. Al Yan looked at Yi Xian. You escaped by yourself? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Al Yan asked again, was it a god? Yi Xian nodded, a god. Mu Xiaocang frowned, what's her name? Yi Xian said solemnly, Yuan Xiaodao. Hearing this, Mu Xiaocang's pupils shrank. It's her. Yi Xian looked at Mu Xiaocang. Miss, do you know her? Mu Xiaocang glanced at Yi Xian without saying a word. Al Yan said, Senior, never mind, just call me Sister Mu. Yi Xian hurriedly said, hello, sis. Mu Xiaocang, Al Yan shook her head. Sly. Yi Xian looked at Mu Xiaocang, sister, do you know where Yuan Xiaodao came from? Mu Xiaocang nodded. That person is no ordinary person. Rumor has it that she has an innate saber spirit body. At the age of 16, she had already reached the peak of Saber Dao True Realm. At the age of 20, she had already formed her own sect, creating the Zen Saber and Azura Ghost Saber. During that era, she was at the peak of Saber Dao, and because of that, she was known as the Saber God. Not only that, but she also participated in the war against the Human King. She fought against him one-on-one, and although she lost, it was because of the Human King's immortal slaying sword gourd. Without that immortal slaying sword gourd, it would be hard to say who would win. Yi Xian frowned slightly, that strong? Mu Xiaocang looked at Yi Xian, you escaped from her? Yi Xian nodded. Mu Xiaocang said in a deep voice, that should be impossible. How did you escape? Yi Xian did not hide anything, I used a divine art from the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension. Hearing this, Mu Xiaocang was relieved, no wonder, fifth dimension. If Yi Xian used a divine art from the fifth dimension, it was possible for him to escape. After all, it was a divine art from the fifth dimension. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, then, Green City, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked at the voice and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two small hands were tightly holding the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, looking a little weak, and there was a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly said angrily, Discard him or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away from me. At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder said coldly, Then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, even now he is fighting for the clan, but the clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that this was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position, it is the wish of everyone. What are you shouting for? As he said this, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. The crisp sound of the slap was heard, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She just covered her cheek with her hand. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, What is your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. I will go through fire and water for the crown prince, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Yi Lang nodded slightly, Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, don't show any mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. Immediately, he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly saw something, and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him, and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage, and in the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard laughed coldly. "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince, and it's the wish of everyone. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's expression turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him, and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 776. Seeing their expressions, Yi Ling asked again, is it not? Yi Xian said with a smile, no. Yi Ling glanced at Yuan Xiaodao and smiled apologetically, sister, don't mind it. Yuan Xiaodao sized up Yi Ling, your physique is very special. Yi Ling grinned, a lot of people say that. Just as Yuan Xiaodao was about to speak, 3 bowls of steaming hot noodles were served. The boss smiled, 3 esteemed guests, please enjoy. Yi Ling did not stand on ceremony and immediately started eating. Yi Xian smiled and also started eating. However, Yuan Xiaodao did not eat. Yi Ling looked at Yuan Xiaodao, sister, are you not eating? Yuan Xiaodao smiled, is it delicious? Yi Ling nodded, it's delicious. Saying that, she placed the egg in her bowl into Yuan Xiaodao's bowl, sister, try it. Yuan Xiaodao looked at the bowl of noodles in front of her. After pondering for a moment, she picked up her chopsticks and started eating. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan Xiaodao and did not say anything. Yuan Xiaodao suddenly said softly, the smell of the mortal world. Yi Ling looked at Yuan Xiaodao, what do you mean? Yuan Xiaodao smiled, it's just that sister has almost forgotten the smell of the mortal world. Yi Ling still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, girl, you go back first. Brother will have a chat with this sister. Yi Ling glanced at Yi Xian, all right. After saying that, she stood up and left. However, when she left, she settled the bill. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Xiaodao, thank you. He was thanking the other party for not making a move in front of Yi Ling. Yuan Xiaodao smiled, shall we go somewhere else to talk? Yi Xian nodded, that's what I was thinking. After saying that, the two stood up and left. In the distant starry sky, Yi Xian stood quietly. Not far from him was Yuan Xiaodao, who had a smile on his face. Yi Xian did not make a move because Yuan Xiaodao's divine sense had already locked onto him. Right now, he was not confident that he could use the 6 paths of truth again. Because he knew that Yuan Xiaodao would never give him the chance to use it. Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian and smiled, are you thinking about how to deal with me? Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm a little curious. I'm curious why you didn't attack directly. Because there's someone behind you. Yuan Xiaodao chuckled. Yi Xian suddenly turned around. Not far from him stood a woman. The purple-robed woman. Yi Xian was slightly startled. He didn't expect that the purple-clothed woman would actually come. Yuan Xiaodao suddenly said, I have to say, Yi Xian, you have given us too many surprises. Especially the people behind you. The people behind you are all stronger than the last. Logically speaking, these people should not be people you know, but they just happen to know you. After saying that, her gaze fell on the purple-robed woman. Take this person for example. Our deity Templar actually doesn't have any information about her. It's really unimaginable. Yen smiled. What? Is your deity Templar very interested in me? Yuan Xiaodao smiled. We are interested in the people behind him. The one we are most interested in is that plain-clothed woman. Yen shook her head and smiled. I'm a little curious. Your deity Templar should have a rough understanding of her strength. Of course, what you know is only what you know. Even so, in my opinion, you shouldn't underestimate her. Since that's the case, why do you keep targeting her? Is it because of this fifth dimension treasure? Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yen. Have you passed the fifth dimension? Yen shook her head. No. Qingcheng, Yi clan, ancestral hall ancestor, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The speaker was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral hall. She said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a young prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was afraid and didn't dare to look at the great elder, but she didn't leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove him from the position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. It's not up to a little girl like you to decide whether to remove him or not. Men, drag her away. At this moment, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder said coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew it was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position. Why are you shouting? He raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. I'm Zhang Mu. Greetings, Crown Prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the Crown Prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. I'm willing to go through fire and water for the Crown Prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy. Do you understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped when he saw something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking toward the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. This young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian ignored Zhang Mu and walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall take over. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you remove his title for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a clan matter. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove his title. This is unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. It's not up to a little girl like you to decide whether to remove his title or not. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's title. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. You'll be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his expression dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 777. Yi Xian blushed with shame and rejoiced at the same time. Fortunately, Qiao Tian was on his side. Otherwise, with her intelligence, he would be in trouble. In fact, he had suffered a great loss at her hands before. Fortunately, she was on his side now. Yi Xian said, Miss Qiao, why don't you handle the auction? Qiao Tian nodded. The auction can't be held in Tianjiang City. If anything happens, it will implicate Tianjiang City. So, we have to change the location. Yi Xian asked, where is the best place? Qiao Tian looked up. Above the starry sky. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. Okay. Qiao Tian said, I'll go prepare. Then, she turned and left. Yi Xian looked up at the starry sky. The purple-clothed woman and Yuan Xiaodao were still fighting. The victor was still undecided. About an hour later, Al Yen appeared next to Yi Xian. Almost at the same time, Yuan Xiaodao appeared not far away. Yuan Xiaodao looked at Al Yen. What a surprise. Lian smiled. What surprise? Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. Why do you have so many people backing you? Yi Xian was speechless. Lian laughed. I also think that he has many people backing him. To be honest, what you see now is only a part of it. There are still some you haven't seen. Yuan Xiaodao raised his eyebrows. Is that so? Yi Xian quickly said, Senior, do I really have many people backing me? Where are they? Tell them to come out. Lian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I lied to you. Yi Xian was speechless. Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian. Just as she was about to speak, Yi Xian smiled and said, Miss Yuan, this treasure of the fifth dimension is incomparably precious. I, Yi Xian, know that my luck is shallow and I am not worthy of this treasure. Therefore, I have decided to find a good master for it. In a few days, I'll be holding an auction. At that time, I'll be auctioning off this treasure, and the highest bidder wins it. Miss Yuan, you must attend. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Lian was stunned for a moment before she smiled. Yuan Xiaodao stared at Yi Xian. You're not an ordinary thief. Yi Xian replied, Miss Yuan, how can you say that about me? I'm doing this for your sake. Look, it's not easy for everyone to cultivate. Fighting and killing, how bad would it be if they hurt themselves? But now, we are using a peaceful method to decide the fate of this treasure of the fifth dimension. This is good for everyone. At that time, we can all sit down, drink tea, chat, talk about martial arts, talk about life. Yuan Xiaodao suddenly retorted, talk your ass. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment before he said, You're cursing me. Yuan Xiaodao was expressionless, I'm not cursing you. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss Yuan, please maintain the demeanor of a strong expert. Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian, are you really willing to hand over this treasure? Yi Xian said in a serious tone, of course. This treasure naturally belongs to the strong. Look at me, my cultivation is so low and my strength is so weak. How can I have the qualifications to possess this treasure? Therefore, I've decided to auction it and give it to a true expert. At that time, Miss Yuan must attend. Shut up. Yuan Xiaodao looked at Yi Xian and suddenly smiled. Yi Xian, do you really think that you can play all the experts? Let me tell you, it's not a bad thing for you if they don't come out now. But if you let them come out, the situation will be out of your control. Moreover, don't treat these people as fools. They clearly know what you're thinking. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm really willing to give up. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Shrine. Ancestor, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince will be removed and Yi Lang will inherit it. The speaker was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged. Whether or not he is crippled, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new Prince Yilang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The Grand Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new Prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yilang inherits the title of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yiling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yilang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "Subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince." Yilang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back." "Understood." Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yilang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian ignored Zhang Mu. Walking up to Yiling, seeing Yiling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yilang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yilang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall, and asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Ti clan guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. This is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. But she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was torn and tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt his head spin, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save, Save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 778. Immortal State. After devouring a sword, he reached the immortal state. Above the immortal state was the end state, above the end state was ascension, above ascension was unknown, and above unknown was creation. His current realm was still on the low side. But luckily, the gap between him and the top experts of this world was getting smaller and smaller. Moreover, his body was at the unknown state and his sword principle was at the peak of the true state. With his current combat power, it shouldn't be difficult for him to defeat an creation state expert without using any external items. If he used external items, he could even kill an earth-level deity. After all, be it the 6 paths of mantra, the immeasurable sword, or the sword gourd, they weren't something an earth-level deity could withstand. However, it was a pity that before he could declare himself king, the temple of God sent a god over. A god. Even if he used all his external items, he still wouldn't be able to resist Yuan Shaodao's strength. That damned woman. Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. He had a feeling that no matter how much he improved, he would always have a super expert as his opponent. Couldn't she make him invincible for a while? Yi Xian shook his head again. A life of taking a beating. At this time, a woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was Qiao Tian. Qiao Tian looked at Yi Xian. Everything is ready. We're just waiting for you. Yi Xian looked up at the sky and asked softly, how many experts have come? Qiao Tian shook her head. I don't know. But there should be a lot of them. Yi Xian smiled. Let's go and meet the top experts of the four-dimensional universe. Then, he turned into a ray of sword light and shot into the sky. Qiao Tian followed him. There was a palace floating in the sky. Qiao Tian had ordered people to build it over the past few days. The palace was far away from the Xuanhuan Great World. Even if there was a battle, it wouldn't affect the Xuanhuan Great World. At this moment, there was no one in the palace. In the center of the main hall, there was a tall pillar platform that was more than 100 feet tall. The pillar platform was about 50 to 60 feet in the air and was very wide. At this time, Yi Xian appeared on the platform. He looked around. There were some private rooms floating in the air, and they were all empty at the moment. No one. Yi Xian looked at Qiao Tian and asked, no one's here? Qiao Tian said, that depends on you. Yi Xian understood. He looked around and opened his palm. The World Prison Pagoda appeared in his palm. As the World Prison Pagoda appeared, a woman suddenly appeared nearby. The person who had arrived was none other than Yuan Shaodao. Yuan Shaodao smiled. Where am I? Yi Xian smiled and said, Miss Yuan is such a powerful expert, so of course she is in the best position. As he spoke, he pointed to the private room directly opposite him. Miss Yuan, this is it. Yuan Shaodao glanced at the private room and said with a smile, the position is excellent. Little fellow, perform well next. This is your life and death performance, I'm looking forward to it. Yi Xian smiled and said, I won't disappoint Miss Yuan. Yuan Shaodao smiled. Good luck. After saying that, she disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in the private room. From her position, she could see the platform where Yi Xian was. At this time, an old man walked in. The old man was dressed in a long black robe, his back ramrod straight like a javelin, giving off a spirited feeling. After the old man came in, he glanced at Yuan Shaodao's position, then looked at Yi Xian. Old man came uninvited, please forgive me. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is a crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders on both sides. Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the mining rights. He is fighting for the clan, and his life is uncertain. Yet, the clan is using groundless excuses to strip him of his crown prince position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you shouting about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, this subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. "Pooh!" Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, and asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu saw something, and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.